Wednesday, November 1st. If anyone is recording this meeting, would you please raise your hand? Do a backflip, and we're on our way.
We are recording this meeting.
And we are recording.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, our first thing on our agenda is a request for determination of applicability for Virginia Chamberlain, 87 Route 28, map 10, parcel W3. Sir?
Good evening, David Little from Ryder and Wilcox, representing Virginia Chamberlain. We provided you with a site plan that shows the house. I have just a Google image that shows where the house is in relation to the nearest wetlands, which are hundreds and hundreds of feet away, which are not an issue here. This property in 2014 was mapped into an AE flood zone, and Virginia is proposing, she has an antique home located on this property, and she's proposing to pick the home up, put it on cribbing, excavate underneath it, and install a new concrete foundation underneath the existing dwelling. It's currently on a dirt crawl space. There's a very old stone foundation that is in bad repair. We've been before the Historic Commission because of the age of the house, and they're requiring that we put a brick veneer on the foundation so it is in keeping with the historic nature of the site. What I can say is that the excavated material, most of all of the excavated material will be removed from the site, and that's necessary to put the house up on the cribbing, and they will be using a small skid steer underneath that to remove the material, and it'll be carted away as it's removed, and then a new foundation will be installed, and the house will be lowered back onto the foundation. The grades around the house will come up anywhere from 2 to 3 feet. And what that will allow us to do is file a letter of map amendment with FEMA to remove the dwelling from the flood zone, which is very advantageous. It's preferred from the building department, and generally it's a preferred thing to do. So I don't think that this is going to have any impact on the flood zone relative to diverting floodwaters. It's far away from the river nearby or any other areas. So we are requesting that we be allowed to proceed with this work with a request for determination.
Thank you. Any comments, Amy?
No, it's pretty straightforward. As Mr. Little said, this is very, very far from any typical wetlands, and it's at the outer edge of the floodplain as well to the Herring River. The nearest homes are quite a distance away, so just even bringing in the minor amount of fill that they're going to be bringing in around the house, it won't create any adverse impact to any abutters in the event that we do get a 100-year storm. And as you said, it's no change to footprint. It's just being picked up, foundation put under it, and then it's going to be a couple feet higher, so they won't have to hopefully pay that much in flood insurance anymore. They'll file the letter of map amendment with FEMA, and hopefully technically that structure will then be out of the floodplain. So I would recommend approval. What did I say? With a negative, yours should say -2. I apologize, because technically it is in a resource area, not the buffer zone. 3 is buffer zone. It should be a -2 determination approval.
Any comments from the commissioners, starting with Rob?
No. Pass. No, I have none. Thank you.
No?
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move we approve the request for determination of applicability for property located at 87 Route 28 with a -2 determination.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed, the motion carries.
All right, everybody
Thank
please sign.
Thank
Rob,
you.
if you would do me a favor and hold on to these at your end.
I'd love to.
Thank you, have a nice evening.
No, Ernie and Rob. You can sign. Right here, sorry. It's your first thing.
Any speakers? Yeah. Next up, we have a request for determination of applicability for Roseanne Howard on 92 Belmont Road. Proposal is a Title V septic system work only.
Thanks, Rob.
For the record, Rick Judd, Moran Engineering, representing the owner, Roseanne Howard, 92 Belmont Road, West Harwich. The existing house is getting ready for transfer of title, and the three-bedroom home is serviced by a single cesspool that's in contact with groundwater. So it's substandard, and under Board of Health requirements and the state, it has to be upgraded to Title V. This afternoon, we made a small revision, and I'll walk you through it on the plan that I submitted to you. There was no change of component locations or the type of soil absorption system, but I'll walk through what we're proposing. The cesspool would be pumped and removed. We would install a 1,500-gallon monolithic septic tank, a 1,000-gallon monolithic pump chamber, and then a soil absorption system. The soil absorption system, about 50% of it is outside the 100-foot mark, about 50% of it's inside the 100-foot mark. All components are greater than 50 feet, but between 50 and 100. We're showing an erosion control barrier to the west. That will stay in place until such time that a conservation mix will take root for the existing grass lawn that's there. The first plan you had a three-sided retaining wall. So if you were on Belmont Road looking at the dwelling, it was basically to help take curse off of grading. In this particular case, we have omitted this afternoon that block retaining wall, so the entire area will just be returned to a grass lawn. Basically looking from Belmont Road towards the resource, you're going to have pretty level area that goes to a 2.5 to 1 ratio, and then to a 3 to 1 ratio after that. We're going to relocate the water service to the north. It currently is to the south. And other than that, there's no planned expansion of the house, no additional bedrooms, anything of the like. At this time, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any comments for us, Amy?
Well, I mean, it's an upgrade from a cesspool to a Title V as a result of a real estate transaction. And the closest new component, I mean, it's gonna be in pretty much the same location as what's there, for the most part. The tank will be 76 feet away from the wetland. The leach field straddles the 100-foot buffer. There's really no place else on this property for it to go that's farther. Belmont Road is right there. So, as long as the Board of Health is fine with the more of just the hill rather than a contained wall around it, that's really not, I mean, just a natural slope is better, I think, in our purview. So this is an improvement from existing conditions. It's currently lawn area, and I would recommend approval with a -3, that it's a buffer zone project that will not have any impact.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions, Rob?
No, I think it's a good upgrade.
Ernie?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. I have a quick question. What is the origin of the wetlands area? Is it just an isolated groundwater?
It's really,
Source?
it's high groundwater back there, but there is a ditch
There's a,
back there.
Huh.
if you
Could be
look,
old bog, right?
if you look at the map that's provided, you see how it goes to the north?
Mm-hmm.
By northeast, it kind of straddles a number of the properties in the back, and when we were back there, you could see a former ditch. It's not functional.
right.
I don't know the history of that area enough to say anything about it.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely high groundwater. It could have been a small old bog or
All right.
just a drainage area, I don't know.
Interesting. well. Do we have a motion? Projects?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for determination of applicability for 92 Belmont Road with a -3 determination.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a request for determination of applicability from the Harwich, and I'm going to try this, the Usamanensial Council for the Homeless Incorporated, 93 and 97 Main Street in West Harwich.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouthport, and helping out Hatch, I'll call it, because I can't pronounce Enumerical Society either, but, and also Habitat for Humanity, who is under agreement for the property and has some site control right now of the property at 93 and 97 Route 28. This coincidentally is right next door to Virginia Chamberlain. There's no other resource areas anywhere near us, just that flood zone that does come in, and her property floods onto ours, just a little bit in the northwest corner, a little bit in the back, and a little bit on the east. We're kind of a little bit of a crown or a high point in the road here. So this proposal is for two properties. There's some work going on. The principal thing, as we mentioned, is a roadway going in that's only a little bit in the flood zone, say 100 or so feet of it, with some drainage, a little bit of fill, coincidental. When you get a coastal flood event, it's just a massive amount of water, and a little bit of fill is generally not considered a problem at all in a coastal event. If you're in a riverine situation where you get a little river and you could create a sort of a beaver dam effect and flood somebody out, that's when the fill becomes much more important. Here, it simply doesn't affect much, especially at the fringes of the flood zone like we are. So that's 93 has that in the front. There's a septic that doesn't quite get into where the road comes through. There's a kind of a garage apartment. We're flipping that around to the back and putting it on sonotubes. If any portion of the house is in the flood zone, they consider the whole house in the flood zone. Because it's less than 50% of the value of the structure, we need only make that horizontal addition comply. So we're going to just elevate that up on sonotubes. That'll be above the flood elevation, and the existing is grandfathered and can remain. In the back, there's a couple of septic systems. No other houses are within it. There's a septic in the back of 97 at all. The one corner nicks it. And then we've got the large system that's serving the barn and the multifamily home that's there. It's kind of a sea captain's house. That's being preserved, by the way, and the facade will have some regulations against any changes. But we are upgrading that septic, and because we are disturbing the ground and so forth in a flood zone, it technically should come to this board. We had a rather lengthy 40B process. All the neighbors were involved, and we tried to work with them to screen and adjust and things as best as we could. And it is 100% affordable out back, so it'll be a nice addition to the town's affordable housing stock. And the housing lot size is pretty similar to some of the ones in the area. So, it ended up being approved, but the 40B process is a comprehensive permit. All the other local permits go through that, but because the Wetlands Protection Act is state, it still has to come to you folks for approval. So that's why we're here tonight. Again, there's two different properties, both under the same names, and basically not much happening except a little bit of roadway work and some subsurface septics with just a foot or two of fill here and there. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them, and if there's anybody from the audience that has any questions, I'd be glad to answer those as well.
Thank you.
Hey,
Okay. So you saw this probably about 6 months ago, maybe a little over at this point in time. So you should be a little bit familiar with it. They withdrew and then reapplied, and that was because there were more questions that other boards had, or more questions that the public may have had that pertain more to other boards than it did to the Conservation Commission. So they went to the Planning Board and received approval, and you've been to the Board of Health?
The Board of Health has reviewed and given a couple letters of support. I did run it by Megan to see if she wanted to look at it anymore, and she didn't think so, but she was gonna give me a ring if she
Okay.
did on the next hearing.
Okay.
There's no variances requested, so it's not much of a review for them.
No, it doesn't look like it. There's only that one upgraded system for, 97, that's going to require a little bit of elevate grade change. Everything else looks pretty straightforward. So on your plan, what I did, because the AE zone kind of meanders through the property, is I did it in pink to show you that really only up here and then down here are within the flood zone. So the vast majority of the road, all the new homes, and most of the septics are outside of our jurisdiction. And again, this is just floodplain. As Mr. Ojala said, this is on the very fringe of the floodplain for Herring River. And you're correct as far as the movement, the lateral movement kind of water across something because of coastal flooding is different than riverine. And this small amount of fill is not gonna have adverse impact. No variances for septic. They meet groundwater, depth of groundwater, where they've tested for the new systems. So as proposed, also it's not within endangered species habitat. So they did not need to get anything from natural heritage. I would recommend, the only condition I would recommend is that during the on-site meeting that we'll have, a condition that not all natural vegetation in the floodplain be removed. When, granted, most of the project's not even within our purview, but it would just be nice to be able to maintain some of the existing vegetation that is in our purview rather than have it be all removed. We can incorporate that. And I would recommend, with that condition, I would recommend approval with a -2 determination.
Thanks, Sammy. Any comments from the commissioners? Rob, do you want to start?
Yeah, Amy, I'm just going on your last comments there, as far as preserving the existing. I'm not sure how you would do that, because the whole site's gonna get
Well, in
pretty much
terms of like
whacked.
flagging trees, maybe tagging a few trees to remain within the floodplain.
Yeah, I did notice, just in looking at the plan, we've got a nice one here we can save that's in the flood zone. That's shown there on the plan as you come in on the right. There's a very big one on Virginia's property, but there's a little bit smaller one there that we can certainly preserve that. And then in the back corner, I'm sure we can work to preserve
Yeah, and there's a few up by 97, I believe, too. It's just to prevent as much as we can a clear cut of the site. You know, most of it's not within our jurisdiction, but maybe also encourage, if there's specimen trees on the site, that they could be left to if they were not within within distance to homes.
The zoning board did concern themselves with the landscape and had us work on that, and we are introducing additional screening for some of the back
Okay.
homes. So they kind of had a keen eye on that, too.
Yeah.
So that might actually take care of it, but I'm open to suggestion.
Ernie?
Couple of questions. So the existing home, number 93, are you planning to do anything with the foundation on that? Is that compliant?
Right now, it has, to the best of my knowledge, a full basement in a flood zone, so it's non-compliant. But because it's a small percentage that we're redoing, under 50%, and it's a lateral addition, even if it were substantial, you wouldn't necessarily have to upgrade the existing home. A horizontal addition wouldn't. So short answer, no, it'll be non-compliant. If, I believe that's gonna be transferred to another gentleman after Hetch is done with it, but if he decides to infill the basement or bring in fill and do a letter map amendment, conditional letter map amendment based on fill with community support, they could make it compliant in that manner, or they could fill the basement up to grade and put some smart vents in it and make it compliant that way. But for right now, no, we're just gonna leave it the way that it is and make sure that all the new construction in the back is fully compliant.
Most of the construction in the back, though, is not in the flood zone, so there's really there's no special conditions.
Only that if any portion of a structure is in it, the entire structure gets that rating, so
Yeah.
that's my understanding of the code anyway, so
Right.
that's what we're doing, yeah.
Are we
That
generally
wouldn't necessarily be in your
Generally
jurisdiction.
comfortable with that, allowing it to be non-compliant, given the scope of the application here?
We don't that's really under building code purview, it's not within our purview. I mean, we have jurisdiction over flood zone, but not over really how they do the construction. If, as you said, if the cost of the renovations, if you will, are less than 50% of the total cost or assessed value of the structure, then legally we cannot make them come up to compliance.
And this will be less than 50%?
That's correct, and the other corollary to that is that there's also an exception for lateral expansion that's
Right.
not supported by the structure, then only that would have to be compliant, even if it is substantial. So either way would be okay on this particular one. But I can certainly mention to the new owner that there's options for him to, try and bring it into compliance.
Yeah, I think, we'd probably be amenable to it.
Yeah.
That's something to think of too when we're gonna, wanna be looking at our regulation changes. We don't really have a lot of towns are starting to have more stringent regulations for floodplain when dealing with conservation. DEP's not there yet, but a lot of towns have good examples. So, it's something we can definitely look at.
All right. Another question for you, too. On the entrance road, there's a leaching trench. And could you tell me I see there's two of them on this plan. What are the purposes of those?
That's simply stormwater controls. We're infiltrating the stormwater on site so that we don't create a problem for the neighbor. And, it's just subdivision control law. So we didn't ask for specifically waivers against doing subsurface drainage. If there was more room, we might have looked to do a grass swale or something, but it's a fairly compressed site. So it's compliant stormwater. You get the deep sump-hooded catch basin to a secondary deep sump-hooded manhole, and then you're allowed to put it into infiltration under the state stormwater management guidelines. So we've got that designed and 2-foot separation, but from the bottom of the trench to adjusted groundwater. So that'll just infiltrate into the ground. It's not that much area, but the pavement that's in the beginning of the road there will get infiltrated in that manner.
Okay. All right, good. And there was one other question for you. So you've given us also this detail sheet for what appears to be, is this covering the leaching trenches that we just talked about then?
Precisely, yeah. That's this
Okay.
detail in the drainage cross-section that talks about the 2-foot separation and so forth, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful, good. I'll take another look at that
Outlines it
while
very, very well.
we have other questions.
Carolyn?
No questions.
Stan?
Nothing.
I've got a question that really I think is beyond our purview, and that's just to do with the density of lots here. I'm curious, is this zoned for quarter-acre lots, or did it receive a variance? It's like a commercial zoning?
Yeah, well, what it is, it's sometimes referred to as a 40B, but it's a comprehensive permit. And when, the way that's set up is that you can bring forward, as long as you have 25% of the units as affordable, you can get waivers through the Zoning Board of Appeals, a comprehensive permit process, the frontage, the lot size, the setbacks, pretty much all the bulk regulations. So that's the only way that you could do this in towns that don't have like development agreements and other mechanisms. And so that's what this is. It's an affordable housing development. Habitat, tends not to be piggy about it. They don't do big multifamily. They try and do single family, sweat equity, pride in home ownership type units that are very livable. Just on a plus side, they're going to be very tightly insulated and set up for solar and heat pumps, and some of them might be close to zero net in terms of impact on the environment. They might get a goose egg for an electrical bill every month. So they build them, they're compact, they're not mansions, but they're very efficient and well-built, and be a nice little community for people that qualify. And then the units out front, so these are 100% affordable. The ones in the front are de facto affordable. They're not the size units that would rent for high dollars, and they hope to keep a lot of the tenants that are in there now to continue. But that'll be, just de facto affordable. In the back, it'll be with a deed restriction. So that's how they have a little bit denser. But again, if you look at the map, it's similar to the density on the east of us. The lots aren't particularly small. They're all about a quarter acres, plus or minus.
Thank you for that. Any comments from the audience? No? Are we thinking of any conditions, or just the one with the trees, I guess?
Yeah, just during the on-site meeting, discussing keeping, especially any like specimen trees, vegetation on the site, and particularly in our purview, but, encourage if there's trees that can be kept without being a hindrance to homes, be able to keep something on the site so it's not wide open. And then, of course, comply with the screening that they were required to do with zoning board of appeals.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for determination of applicability for 93 and 97 Main Street, Route 28, with a -2 determination, and the condition that you work closely with the conservation administrator to determine which trees and bushes can be saved.
Second?
Second that.
Second it. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your time.
Please sign. Huh? Yeah.
Do we have it for the next meeting?
We do.
Mary? We do? Okay. Next, we have a notice of intent for David and Evelyn Granger of 21 Uncle Venius Road. It's a demolition of existing dwelling and tight tank and construction of a new dwelling and tight tank.
You want that?
Good evening, David Clark, Clark Engineering. I also have with me Teresa Sprague from Blue Flax Design. When we were here last, I think we had a favorable response from the commission on the project, with the exception of we didn't show any mitigation for the expansion of the driveway. The Granger's contracted with Blue Flax Design, and Teresa has prepared a mitigation plan and restoration plan for the property, and she's here to present that and answer any questions.
Thanks. Good evening, Teresa Sprague, Blue Flax Design. So I'll skip the existing conditions since you're all familiar with the site, except to say that there's about a 2,400 square foot area of lawn out on the outer edge, lawn strip, and an area of what we're calling naturalized vegetation, which consists mainly of invasive plant species, including Asiatic bittersweet, shrub honeysuckle, autumn olive, and then a strip of English ivy along the front of the roadway. We are proposing to, in addition to that, there are 2 existing tupelo trees. There's a small stand of 4 trees right beside it, but there are 2 tupelo trees that are in really bad shape. They're completely covered with English ivy and invasive vines, many broken branches. We really looked at options for potentially saving those trees, but our fear is that once we remove the invasive vines from the trees, that they're just gonna fall down. So I think that's what's basically holding them up right now. So what we're proposing to do is remove the invasive plant species. This is about 3,310 square feet of total area. 2,151 square feet of that is on the bank itself, and 1,159 square feet is within the edge of the 50-foot buffer, so along that grass line that we're proposing to restore. We'll be planting that with a mix of grasses and herbs. We'll be plugging this area in blue along the edge of the salt marsh with appropriate salt marsh species that are listed in the plan, and then be replanting this area with a total of 50 native shrubs, and in addition to that, to replace the 2 tupelo trees that will be lost, we're proposing to plant 2 additional tupelo trees in the northern corner of the property. So I think, you know, and we list our goals and objectives clearly in the land management plan, improve wildlife habitat function and value, enhance the integrity and function of the resource area, and then again to provide the mitigation for the 335 square feet of increased structure. So I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the project or the plan.
Thank you. What do you think, Amy?
I think it's nice to see that, though you have to remove a couple of tupelos, that tupelos made it back into your replanting plan. A lot of times, we see shrubs and ground covers, and of course we have those here too, but it's, tupelos like being on this fringe, so I think they'll do great there. Also, the plants picked, I think, are very applicable to the site. They're either currently existing or are nearby, especially the fragrant sumac. It's a nice addition, I think. I think it's a great planting plan. They're going to be removing, it's very overgrown there now. It hasn't been managed in a while, but I did go back after our site visit today and look at kind of where the previous edge of lawn had been before versus where the edge of lawn will be now, and there is a reduction there, because I was trying to kind of look in my mind how we can make up for the addition also in terms of pervious driveway. And I think you have that there, is you are reducing some what used to be lawn area and making it native plantings. It's also in terms of mitigation, it's a 3,310 square foot mitigation effort going on here. So we had questions, you know, we talked a little bit on site today about that pervious driveway that we talked about last time, and in my mind, the mitigation, that this would qualify for a variance, would be amenable for a variance, because you are reducing some of what used to be lawn, as well as you're more than mitigating for it. This will be a much better, nicely vegetated buffer to that edge of marsh, so I would recommend approval.
I guess, Amy, I've got a procedural question. So this was heard on the 21st. Did the commission vote to approve the actual structural changes?
The commission continued the project. There didn't seem to be any questions in regards to the structure itself. It seemed like all the questions had to do, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who's here, mostly you wanted to see a really comprehensive planting plan, as well as there was some questions about the driveway expansion, but none in terms of the structure itself. If you have any questions, I'm sure they can answer them.
Yeah, I don't want to go over ground that's already been covered. I just don't see in the plans the square footage of the existing building versus what is proposed. So there's an area that has a staircase, and there's some grass. And so is that considered footprint that will be replicated for the new house?
So on the official site plan prepared by Clark Engineering, we have the site coverage numbers. The existing building is 1,382 square feet. The proposed building is 1,366, so there's a net reduction in the size of the building. Existing deck and stairs is 288 square feet, proposed is 242, so there's a net reduction in the decks and stairs. Where we are increasing is the driveway. We have an oversized one-car driveway parking space now, and we'd like to increase the width to allow 2 cars to park off the street. So, net reduction in the building and slight increase in the overall site coverage because of the driveway expansion.
And the deck would require a variance as well?
We asked for a variance for the increase in the driveway.
How about the deck as a new structure in the 0 to 50? Would that need a variance as well?
I mean, the whole thing is a new structure. There's nothing closer to the top of Coastal Bank than what's currently out there.
Isn't the deck staked out to be closer to the bank?
The closest point is actually the shed, the existing shed that's there now.
Okay. I thought I saw the deck to be staked out to be closer to the coastal bank when I visited the
The
site.
deck is 1 foot closer to the coastal bank.
1 foot closer.
But we're maintaining the same setback as the shed that's going to be removed.
Okay, so the shed is coming out.
Yeah.
Basically, we consolidated, that's one of the other benefits of the project in that the existing square footage, if you took the overall length and width, occupies more of the property than what we're proposing, because we consolidated it, so there's a little bit more areas for wildlife passage and whatnot.
All right. Okay, so the deck will not occupy any more space in that backyard than the present building. I saw the stakes. I was, I guess, confused by that. Okay, I think I'm going to ask the commissioners to see if they have any questions and go forward. Rob, do you have any questions?
No, I still think the plan is excellent.
Ernie?
When you expand the driveway, then there would be fill required?
Pardon me?
Fill required to expand the driveway?
Yes, and we're taking advantage of the fact that we need additional fill over the tight tank to prevent buoyancy during a time of a coastal storm. Typically, you would design these to only consider buoyancy due to groundwater. But because it's a tight tank and there's a possibility of it being empty when a coastal storm comes by, there's a lot more buoyancy force. And so we need that extra cover over the tank to keep it in the ground.
So regardless of the outcome of the driveway application, then that fill would still be
required.
Yeah, good, okay, fine. No other
That's it?
Do you have the option of putting in a larger size tight tank?
There is a 2,000-gallon tank there now, I believe. It could be just a 1,500. We are going to a 5,000. We'd like to go to a 6,000, but I don't know if the contractor can pull it off because they're deeper than a regular tank, so we have to do a tremendous amount of dewatering.
Right.
But the idea is to get a bigger tank in there to cut down on the frequency of service visits by the pumping contractor.
Right, that's kind of what I was thinking, is trying to get the biggest tank in there possible to benefit the homeowner. I don't think it
It
really,
benefits the neighbor, because
Sure,
if you've got a 1,500-gallon tank, the truck's there once a week at least. So,
the less trips with a honey wagon, the better.
Carolyn?
I'm a little bit confused on the fill. You said that you are going to you're going to raise the level over the tight tank
yes,
by how much?
about 1.5 foot over
A
existing
foot and a
grade.
half. But then you will use additional fill to expand the driveway.
Yes. Well, it goes hand in hand. We place the driveway over the tight tank for that reason, that
Well, the driveway that's there now?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the new driveway that you're requesting, it looks to me like you're going to need to put some fill into the wetlands in order to make it large enough for a car.
We're only placing fill within the floodplain, not the
not in the wetlands at all?
None.
Partially in the buffer. was what you're
Partially in the buffer.
But
It's in the
not in the
buffer.
wetland.
I was, yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I was misspeaking. Partially in the buffer, and how much fill do you propose that you will need in the buffer?
If you give me a second here, just to scale this off.
Same, it's about 2 feet.
The right scale here, 20, okay. Two to 3 yards,
Oh, okay.
if that.
Oh, that's all?
That's not very
The parking space is basically 20 by 30. So, and we're adding a 1.5 foot on one side, and then it tapers down to 0 at the street. So, overall, I think, yeah, 2 to 3 yards, that's it.
Okay. Now, in general, I don't like anything sizable in the 0 to 50. But first of all, your land management plan is beautiful. It is nicely done and very easily read.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. And you have proposed a large amount of mitigation, of clearance of invasives and mitigation, which is greatly appreciated. On this chart here, it says that the follow-up for invasive species management will be ongoing over the next 3 growing seasons.
Yes.
I think that management of the invasive species in that area is going to be an annual job.
Well, yes, and we do note at the end of the plan that monitoring and management
Spot
should be
treatment.
ongoing, spot treatment should be ongoing. So we very clearly expect to reach that 90%, 80 to 90% control in year 1, and then it's that last 10 to 20% that we're following up in years 2, 3, and then those.
5, 10?
Well, and then the best case scenario is, we basically crafted this based on the fact that an order of conditions is good for 3 years.
Yeah.
So then we would come back and file whatever needs to be filed in the future to do follow-up management as necessary. So it's going to be necessary to do
Yes.
that kind of follow-up management. We know there's a substantial seed bank there. We know that we'll be able to reach and maintain that 98% control in the 3 years. But if somebody's not continuing to follow up and do spot treating, it could become a problem again. So it's important to follow up. In our experience, people are, once they've started a plan like this and see the huge improvements that they get and the considerable cost to manage something that's grown so far out of control, that the follow-up management is really insignificant compared to the initial upfront costs and continue to manage in the future.
And that's something too that we can, when we do the certificate of compliance for this project, you can do ongoing conditions. So you can pick a level of maintenance. Obviously, you wouldn't want to let it completely go and
Right.
then redo it again, just
Mhm.
with a certificate of compliance condition. But you put, a threshold on there and what's considered maintenance
Right.
in the future, just to encourage people to continue to do that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any comments, Tim?
Yeah, one question, we were talking about the driveway. What was the material that you're using in the driveway?
We're gonna finish the driveway with crushed shells of stone or a mixture.
And,
Yeah.
okay, so that
That
was,
was-
That's, yeah, they would like to do a gravel shell mixture, yeah.
Okay. We can condition size, like at least 3/4 inch to an
Mhm.
inch to allow for best drainage.
so we don't see any potential runoff into the wetland area or
Mhm.
anything? So,
Okay, thanks. Amy, is this clear in terms of certificates of compliance?
There's no outstanding permits on this property
I know that
that I know of.
that shed came up not long ago, and it expanded more than I expected it to. I think there was something to do with a concrete pad
Maybe.
that was allowed to be part of the
I
footprint.
think that was an RDA, so because it was a replacement, I'd have to
Okay.
check, so it didn't have a certificate of compliance requirement to it, but I can look into that.
Well, it was a very small shed that had a fire, and
Right.
it's a much bigger shed than it was before, and so the site has undergone several rounds of expansion. It was a very small cottage not long ago. I don't feel that I want to hold the process, but I don't support the filling. It's in the 0 to 50, correct? It's not the 50 to 100, the driveway. Yeah, it's in the 0 to 50. I don't support that. I think that, we've allowed some of these in response to restoration, invasive plant control, and I just don't think that's a good match, in my opinion. But this has been vetted before, so I don't think I want to hold it up. I think it's up for every commissioner to decide the way they want to go. But that's the one feature that I don't really support at this point. Any comments from the audience? If not, if there's any further comments from the commissioners, otherwise we'll have a vote.
Maybe we could specify that the fill brought in is perfectly clean.
That would be an acceptable condition. Yep.
Just so we're not adding anything that would,
Yeah, that's a standard too.
Yeah, I would recommend as little as possible bringing any loam on the site. So if possible, and this could be covered with perhaps a sand and maybe a little bit of compost mix, would be my recommendation, just based on the seed bank here.
some of that nice screen sand.
Would that be
Fine.
appropriate? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I would move that we approve the notice of intent for 21 Uncle Vinnie's Road to expand the existing driveway as requested.
Second.
Discussion?
If I may,
I think we're...
it's also, it's a tear down rebuild technically, the whole project.
I thought we approved that the last
We
meeting.
didn't
We
approve
did not.
anything,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
believe,
All
at the
right.
last meeting.
Okay, then I will amend the motion then to include demolition of the existing dwelling and installation of a new expanded tight tank. I think that covers it.
That was their application, yeah.
Okay.
Second again.
Second. For discussion, I would just like to ask about the monitoring for the plan. It seems like it's pretty good, it's routine, what's being asked for. Is there anything we want to add to this to make sure that we can really track that boundary between the salt
Yep.
marsh?
I would say biannual monitoring the first year, and then annual monitoring at each year after. I would, reported by, say, September 1st.
Okay.
For
Maybe
three-
March, September
three seasons?
timeframe. At least the well, right, I mean, for the life of this permit, actually, it really should be for 3 years. So 2 times the first year, and then 1 time each the
Yep.
following 2 years. And then at the time of certificate of compliance, let us definitely last status update and say what the plan is for ongoing maintenance.
Yes, that's pretty typical.
I bring it up because this is a site where I have seen problems over the years. It's pretty easy with that very short lawn and then that slope to have people come in, the property sells, the new owners, they start playing games. And it's really, it'd be a concern to me to see that filling occur right off that edge. The salt marsh is right there. It's right off the deck, where the deck's gonna be. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? One opposed? The motion carries.
And
And-
1 abstention,
And one abstention.
One abstention. Thank you.
3 to 1 to 1, passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hand that back, please, Fred.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you want to go right to the extension, Amy, or do you want to do something
Yeah,
next?
let's just,
We're moving along pretty good here.
let's do the extension, and then just on the discussions, So after, if you don't mind, we won't do the orders of conditions until at the end of the meeting. And then after we do the extension, if we could do 2079 Route 28, so number 2 on discussion, then 49 Lovers Lane, then Depot,
Okay.
because we have people in the audience for those items. And the extension permit, if you want to announce it.
Sure. We have a request for an extension permit for an order of conditions for Ann Helgren and Michael Gilligan for 74 Uncle Vinnie's Road. One-year extension is requested for mitigation plantings.
Good evening, my name is Rick Roy, from Rick Roy Construction, and I'm representing the Gilligans on this extension.
Do you want me to?
Yeah,
talk
go
about it?
ahead, you can.
Okay.
We talked, Amy, I was in Amy's office this afternoon, so we went over all of that.
So this has been kind of an interesting project. This project started back in 2007 and then the project that started in 2007 was originally for a different addition, an 18 by 20 addition, and the enlargement of the chimney and repair and replace the decking and railing. So that work was done, and that mitigation planting for that work was done. The permit stayed alive, and then in 2015, Rick applied, the permit was still active, and they wanted to do this addition that you are seeing right now. That got approved with a small amount of mitigation. So that was that was 2 years ago. So in fact, most of the work for the original work on the permit is done. It's what was approved 2 years ago that they would like a 1 or 2 year extension to be able to finish that for personal reasons, as well as the planting. So I would recommend, seeing as how it's really only work that we approved 2 years ago and not the work that we approved 7 years ago, I would approve up to a 2 year extension.
And just to add to that, it's only 165 square feet of mitigation that's contiguous to the
small.
wetland. So I'm only here because, from my experience being a builder for 22 years, it's always good to make sure that you're keeping your records up to date. I didn't want to get caught short. There's always things that come up and happen. I want to be able to do the planting in the spring, because that's a better time to plant, but the order of conditions would have run out. Even though we already have a building permit for this project and we've already started the project, so it's not like there's a real scheduling issue. I just did not want to be in violation by
Right.
going over into the next year, that's all.
So what was approved in 2015 is the 11 by 15 addition that you see shaded. If we could pass one down to those guys, that would be great. I don't have another one. As well as the small amount of mitigation. So everything else has been done. It's just that screen porch that we approved and the mitigation planting.
And in actuality, when we were redoing this, the original documents that we used for the original permitting, because the rules changed and everything else, we had to be brought up to date because we actually had to be farther out of the 0 to 50 because the new delineation showed that we were farther out, so we're in good shape.
Yeah. The old delineation didn't show that this property has a small, thin bordering vegetated wetland just next to the actual open water. So the new plan in 2015 reflected that, and that was a delineation done by Lynn Hamlin. So it pushed the proposed addition that you see farther, so it was outside the 50.
Any comments from
Do
the
you guys want to
commissioners?
see that or no?
Yeah.
Just a shaded addition there. You can.
Do you have any comments, Dan?
No, I was just asking maybe a question.
Just looking at this, the area where the mitigation is going to take place is where again?
Mitigation was right up, it was against the natural vegetation that's on the banking already.
Oh, right on the
Well,
Contiguous to the-
there's a current, it doesn't show there, but a vegetated buffer against the pond anyway, and it was just gonna be landward of that.
oh, I see, okay. All right, that's brush,
Yeah.
okay.
it says in the conditions, the location shall be discussed on-site with the administrator and the contractor.
I guess my only comment is thank you for being diligent and keeping it current. That is appreciated.
Comments, Karen?
My question is, what are we approving?
An extension permit.
This letter, I thought was for the mitigation plantings, but now you're talking about a screen porch also.
Yeah, it wasn't just the plantings, when, it is the porch,
It is the porch and the mitigation plantings.
yes.
And you're looking for a 2-year extension?
I would recommend 2 years under the circumstances. It was kind of unknown and loose at the beginning. In terms of the old projects, 7 years ago versus what was done. That this was only really a 2-year-old permit, essentially.
Do we have a motion?
Basically, the motion is to extend the 2-year
Right.
permit, so I'll
Or
make a
condition
motion that
for
we
2 years.
extend the 2-year permit,
So 2 years from today.
2 years from today, 74 Uncle Vini's Road.
Would it be 2 years from today or from the 15th when the existing one expires?
No, it's 2 years from today.
Second, anybody?
I'll second it.
Second, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.
I might be able to do it. Hopefully, that should be okay.
There's not enough, though.
Right, because that, I will next time. I'll explain that to you later. Sorry, did everyone vote in favor of the extension?
Yes.
Okay. If we could jump down to the discussions, Brad.
Sure.
2079 Route 28.
Hi, good evening again, Teresa Sprague with Blue Flex Design. And I'm going to start off by saying that this is unusual, and I've never had to come before a commission for something like this before, so please forgive me. Basically, I was contacted by the property owner at 2079 Route 28, Lisa Cahill. She was before you. I have to admit, I have not seen an order of conditions, so I'm not exactly sure when, to request some expansion to some of the structure in her property, including, I believe at the time, there was an 83 square foot cantilever deck addition, and then a 410 square foot deck, a new deck.
It was about 8 months ago. It was extensive discussion and hearings on this one. Sorry, I don't have copies.
I have a copy of just this original
Yeah.
plan.
Oh, okay.
That was submitted, but I don't think I have a copy. I don't have the architecturals with me.
No, I just meant the site plan in
Yes.
case anybody was
Also
confused
approve
about
the
where this was.
extension.
Oh,
Wall
okay, I
next
can
door.
pass this
Mhm.
around.
To the,
Okay.
Would you like me to pass that around? This was the plan, I believe, that was submitted, but I'm not 100% sure that this is the plan that was approved.
Let me look at it.
Okay.
I'll tell her right away.
Thank you.
Yes.
Landscapers and everything else.
I
Do
walked
you mind
away
if I
from
hand
this.
this over to the
No,
chairman?
no, not at all, no. So in just understanding, my understanding is that the 83 square feet of cantilever deck, so there's an existing deck that needed to be reconstructed because it was in very poor condition, and there was a request for 83 square feet of cantilever out over some existing lawn, and then 410 square feet of new deck. I guess there was also a request for an increase in some patio that was
Didn't go
within,
through.
that was denied, is my understanding. So I believe what was offered at the time by the consultant was About 2,000 square feet of mitigation. That was about 500 square feet within the 50-foot buffer and about 1,260 within the 50 to 100. So basically, there was about 2,000 square feet of mitigation offered for 493 square feet of deck to be constructed. So I think that what Mrs. Cahill came to me and asked was if there was an opportunity for us to rework that mitigation plan. So I believe what happened was, or this is my understanding, and please correct me because I'm just coming into this, that there was a significant amount of mitigation offered within the 50-foot buffer to offset the request for the patio, which was then denied. But that the deck was approved and the cantilever was approved, but the mitigation plan remained the same?
It did, because the commission saw it as a significant increase in hardscape coverage in the 50 to 100, and they considered the cantilever, if I'm not, correct me if I'm incorrect, but they considered the cantilever into the 0 to 50 as new disturbance in the 0 to 50.
Even though there was no ground
That's right.
disturbance, it
Yep.
was over a lawn area?
Right. They went over that line.
Because if in general, I'm just looking at this, and if in general, within the 50-foot buffer, you required a 2-to-1 and mitigation, that would require about 166 square feet of mitigation, and 410 square feet, obviously, at 1-to-1 in the 50-100 would be about 410 square feet. And even if we did 3-to-1 in the 50-foot buffer, that would require about 249 square feet of mitigation, and 2-to-1 in the 100-foot buffer, 820. So right now, they're required to do about 2,000 square feet of mitigation, depending on, and every town does it differently, I know, so that's why I'm coming back to discuss this with you. If they did a 3-to-1 in the 50 and 2-to-1 in the 100, that would be about 1,000 square feet of mitigation. And if they did a 2-to-1 in the 50 and a 1-to-1 in the 100, which, depending on towns, what different towns ask for, that would be about 576 square feet of mitigation. So I guess the concern that Mrs. Cahill has is that she's being required, or not that she's being required, but that there was a significant amount of mitigation put forward for a fairly small increase in structure. We're talking about 493 square feet, all of it elevated and over existing lawn. And she's wondering if we'd have the opportunity to rework that mitigation plan and represent it to you. And obviously before we did that, I wanted to come in and discuss that with you first.
Yeah. When Teresa called me, because this had been in front of the commission for several hearings, I said it might be, usually I do the pre-application consultation stuff, but because this was such a hard project, and there was disagreement between, I think, owner and previous consultant, and that plays into it too.
Yeah.
The owner may not have been in agreement with what was being presented. So instead of just me being the only one giving Teresa advice, I thought it wise to bring her in and have you talk to her about it and kind of give your background on this case.
Shall I start?
I think you have to abstain, don't you?
I have to abstain.
No, Rob.
They're no longer my client,
They're
so
not- okay.
I can let it rip on this one.
Okay.
I will.
No, you don't have to.
Well, I think this went back and forth quite a bit, and I think the applicant was looking for quite a lot, and the idea of quite a lot, meaning new structures in the 0 to 50.
Yeah,
And I think that we typically look for ways to not have new structures in the 0 to 50.
exactly. No, I understand Harwich's position on new structure in the 0 to 50 completely, and yes.
In fact, I think, if I can speak for us, I think we're looking for opportunities to pull structures out.
Yep.
And so vegetation restoration is useful. It's nice to see it. It's not often a first option
Yeah.
in these cases. So I think dangling large amounts of vegetation restoration is often done to achieve increases of hardscape in 0 to 50, and I personally don't favor that. I personally favor retreat in the 0 to 50 over vegetation restoration. So I think that in this case, it makes sense that if the applicant wants to bring something to us, that's fine, and we can discuss it and see what we can come up with, but I don't think we're going to make a decision tonight on
No, that wasn't the
No,
intent.
Right.
Yeah, it was just to bring
Feedback.
forward, and we're not looking to come to you with any other increases. I think what she's looking at is just to come forward with a new revised mitigation plan that we would present to you, similar to what we've, presented in the past.
And what would the net effect of the new plan be, Teresa?
So I think reasonably, she would like to reduce some of the mitigation here. It's a significant amount of mitigation for, I'm just being frank with you. It's a significant amount of mitigation for, for the square footage that's being requested for increase or was approved. And I think, again, your point is that a significant amount of mitigation was brought forward or was proposed in order to offset some potential increase in structure in the 0 to 50. Do understand Harwich's position on issuing variances and that it doesn't, circumstance similar to the one we were just discussing, where there's a really significant improvement through the project for the resource area. That makes sense. I do agree that in this case, the mitigation that was requested maybe was not a significant improvement to the resource area. It was simply just throwing plants and numbers out there to see if they could get something approved, and it was not. So now, in consideration of what was approved and what's actually taking place here, the cantilever deck has been constructed, and so the deck is safe, it's in good shape. There's not even any additional shading on the ground, which is, important too, I think, to understand. So there's not any disruption in the vegetation that was there, which was lawn before. And then the new deck, the 410 square foot deck, has not been constructed yet. So I think before they get that underway, she would like to bring back yes.
I have a question. Your numbers on the square footage of the deck include the deck that faces east, is it? That
That's the
faces
new
the
deck,
water,
yeah.
that's
This is the
cantilevered.
cantilever
This
Yes,
is
that's-
going
They're connected.
back to what I can remember from
Yes.
this being here
Proposing to take out
several
this
months ago.
Yes.
That's got
Okay,
scaled back.
that deck, and then my recollection is along the side,
Yes, that's the
the north
410 square
side,
feet.
where they originally proposed the hot tub,
On the deck, yeah.
on the
Oh,
deck.
okay.
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. I
no,
was
no
like,
hot
no,
tub.
I'm not
That's
aware
the
of a hot
deck.
tub. Okay.
That's the deck that we're talking about.
That's the deck we're
Yes.
talking about.
That's the deck we're
The
talking
400
about,
something
where the hot
Exactly.
tub was
deck.
supposed to be.
Okay.
And the 50 to 100, right?
Yes.
It was, could you remind me whether that's a brand-new deck?
It is a brand-new deck.
Addition.
Yes. So the 83.
And then you are including the square footage of an L-shaped deck?
So the 83 square feet is the square footage that's cantilevered, and that's actually cantilevered in that 0 to 50-foot buffer zone. So there's no ground connection, there was no ground disturbance whatsoever. It was just cantilevered out when the deck was rebuilt. And then in addition to that 83 square feet that cantilevers into the 0 to 50, there's 410 square feet of brand-new deck that's proposed in the 50 to 100, or that was approved in the 50 to 100.
And, okay, so.
Connected.
Yes, and it is connected, yes.
Yes, I do remember that. And so she feels that our mitigation is unfair?
Well, it's at 6 to 1 in the 50-foot buffer zone and 3 to 1 in the 50 to 100, which is unusual. My experience working in every town from Wareham to Truro, Weston, Wellesley, Sudbury, all other towns, in general, it's either 2 to 1 in the 50 and 1 to 1 in the 50 to 100. And then, for instance, Falmouth requires 3 to 1 in the 50.
That's where we're more in line
And,
with.
yeah, and 2 to 1 in the,
That's what.
yeah. So that would still reduce the total mitigation required from the 2,000 square feet that was proposed down to, that would be about 1,000 square feet if we reduced it at 3 to 1 in the 50 and 2 to 1 in the 50 to 100.
I think it was also, that was what was given to us to review, was that amount.
And it sounds like my understanding, and again,
Those up.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
know,
we
I'm
got
100%
information,
sure,
but-
I'm not implying that at all. It sounds like there was maybe some miscommunication between the property owner and the previous, and her previous consultant. So that she wasn't 100% aware, she didn't understand the regulations and maybe was not 100%, and I'm not
No.
faulting anybody on that. It just happened.
So would you be amenable to this coming back as an amendment? Request for an amendment? or change in the plan.
My recollection on our discussion on this was that, in general, we would have, at least on my vote, I would have voted against the cantilevered deck, except in this particular circumstance, it got a fair amount of sunshine based on the orientation.
So the deck, I believe, is east facing. So there's actually the ground layer, that's where the ground is shaded by the house generally throughout the day. So there's no additional shading or disturbance in that
In
area.
general, we might have not have approved this project because it is substantial in the 0 to 50.
Well, it's,
So I think
it's,
the
yeah.
mitigation that they were proposing to us above and beyond what we would have required was taken into consideration.
I was not here for the original discussion. I mean, 83 square feet of cantilevered deck that doesn't cause any ground disturbance whatsoever and is not providing any additional shading, so there's no adverse impact to the buffer zone, I would say would be, you know, I don't know if you would require 6-to-1 mitigation in general for that. I don't know if that's, you know, if your regulations point that way. In general, I can just tell you my experience in working in other communities, and I do understand that Harwich in general does not approve new structure in the 0 to 50, but I think in the case of a cantilevered deck where there's no ground disturbance, no soil disturbance, no habitat loss, no change in you know, available sunlight or et cetera, I'm presuming that's why you approved it, because there was no impact.
It was an iteration. I mean, what came to us first was more than what was approved. So there was a back and forth.
Right.
And there was a offering of large amounts of vegetation restoration, so, you know.
And that was pared back as well.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't think we felt obligated to stick to a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1. We were trying to avoid structures in the 0 to 50 completely, and we were trying to minimize new structures in the 50 to 100. So, you know, it went back and forth. Is the purpose to save costs?
I think partially, sure. Yeah, to be frank, yep.
My feeling is that it would take a site visit to go really look specifically at what was being requested, and even then, I don't know, I can't say right now how I feel about it, because I really, I think we're dancing around this topic all the time,
Yep.
and I think we're giving up some things occasionally in the name of plant restoration, and I'd much rather see us pull structures out and
Yeah.
not have new ones.
I mean, the interesting thing about this site is, you know, it's a highly developed lot. There's a seawall that disconnects the you know, the yard, the upland portion of the yard from the beach, from the resource area. So the coastal bank is actually a seawall in this case. So it's one of those sites that when you're trying to, you know, it's very clear, for instance, in the other site, we have a direct connection to the salt marsh, a coastal bank. We have a direct abutting opportunity to really improve the resource area. On a site like this, it does seem that the opportunity to directly abut and improve a resource area would be in the isolated wetland. However, I live on Pleasant Bay myself in Harwich, so I understand the importance of water quality on Pleasant Bay. I'm very attuned to that, and so I could see that the commission would feel that, you know, reducing lawn at the edge of the coastal bank, which is technically a seawall, is, you know, would be helpful.
Especially one that receives so many herbicides and pesticides.
So I can't speak
That I know go
to,
into the wetland, that I know go over that wall.
yeah, and I mean, as happens in probably every yard on Pleasant Bay, I don't know the landscape maintenance. I literally have no knowledge of what's happened. I just know that I was contacted, asked to review the landscape plan, look at what was proposed, understood that there was some miscommunication between Mrs. Cahill and her previous consultant, and to say, okay, I have not designed anything, so I can't say that I could even meet you out there tomorrow and review anything, because I haven't put that together. I just wanted to discuss this with you
Well,
this evening.
how about, what if she were to do a sketch concept plan, and we go out and take a look at it?
Would the homeowner be, would they possibly accept a permanent ban of herbicides and pesticides on the entire property if we were to
I would
go
imagine
back
that
on?
most commissions will require that in maintenance of their 0 to 50-foot buffer zone, that it's maintained organically, but I don't know what Harwich requires in this particular case, because we don't do that kind of landscape maintenance, so.
I know ongoing, I used to maintain that property, so I know it like the back of my hand, and that's why I had to abstain. But because of what goes on,
Yeah,
I resigned there.
okay. I mean, I would think it would be more than reasonable to request that no synthetic fertilizers. I mean, frankly, anybody who fertilizes their lawn should be soil testing before they fertilize their lawn for any reason. I know that doesn't happen.
never
We
happened,
know
yeah.
that. I
Oh,
know
that's
that.
something we should definitely take into account.
Well, it's been a long time since we haven't required that in 0 to 50, so that's kind of a given to me.
Right.
The 50 to
I
100.
assumed it would be, yeah.
Yeah, 50 to 100, I think we're moving to be, well, there are exceptions to the 50 to 100.
Yeah.
I'm presuming there's no in-ground irrigation in the 0 to 50?
No, there's irrigation,
there
yeah,
is.
but there is there. It's been there
It's been there,
for-
so, okay, so I know
It's a
no,
Bell too, so
Yeah.
yeah,
that's.
yeah, okay.
There was, yeah, we couldn't really eliminate it, but
I
we
mean,
should
I think
definitely look
that's
at the
something we would
chemical issue.
definitely include in any kind of a mitigation plan. I mean, I think the difficult part for a commission,
Included in the
It's probably in the
mitigation.
order of conditions now.
I would,
I don't have it in front of me, so.
You don't think so?
It wasn't
I
brought up
haven't
last
seen
time.
it.
It's certainly in
Does
the,
it go in automatically?
it's in the 0 to 50, I would think. We could say, if there's existing irrigation, we could say,
It was
keep
never
it.
mentioned.
I don't have the file with me,
Yeah.
so,
Would she be interested in taking out her irrigation?
I would certainly bring that to her. I mean, I haven't discussed any of this in depth, I'm just here to discuss this, but if, yep,
that would be tough too, because it's such an exposed
It
site
is, it
Yeah.
is.
that
The place would
things,
get cooked.
I mean, I can see the no, you know, the chemical conditions, but
mhm.
I think it'd actually be worse to not.
I think
Not irrigate.
removing the herbicides and pesticides would be a bigger win
Yeah, I agree.
than the overabundance of mitigation plantings.
I'd be real surprised if it's not in the order.
I'll take a look. I just, we only
Yeah.
had it on for discussion, so I didn't bring some of the discussion
Hmm?
that
Doesn't that go
files
into the
with me.
first part of the order, not the
Well, I
special?
mean, certainly, Amy, I could contact you,
Yeah,
and we could look
absolutely.
at that order of
Question, but it's
conditions.
been, like I
I
said,
know one of the issues with
times
that is
three, yeah.
monitoring and regulation, with requiring no, you
Yeah.
know, no synthetics.
Yep.
I'm positive it wasn't mentioned, because I couldn't say anything, and that would have been something I would have brought up.
Yeah, if there's any lawn disturbance, it's almost been just a template in the 0 to 50. It's possible that it didn't come up.
Yeah,
And-
I wish I could say, but
Yeah,
I don't have it with
we'll
me.
check on that.
Okay,
That would be a perfect site to transform into an organic program, because they do have good drainage, they do have full sun.
mhm.
So shading and poor drainage, the things that typically are the downsides of an organic program, they don't have. So they would be a perfect scenario for a
Right.
conversion.
Yeah, and I mean, I
Lower
know
the
there's
cost dramatically
an
as
ugly
well.
duckling phase, but it's pretty, you know, it's fairly short-lived when you convert from you know, a synthetic program to an
Mhm.
organic program, but it's, you know, in general, you get through that and you've got a healthier site, so I mean, I'd absolutely be willing to bring that to the Cahills, and I can't imagine that from a commission standpoint, that would be unreasonable to put into a order of conditions.
Yeah, it might be there. Let me ask you, the plantings that were planned along the seawall, are
Yes.
those some of those they'd like to scale back on?
Well, I think one of the issues too here is that there's an easement, and I don't know if this was discussed at your previous hearing, but there's an easement that runs along, and it's a right-of-way. So it's not a view easement, it's actually a foot easement for the people who live behind to reach the beach and use the
On
beach.
the left side of the property as you go to the wall.
Right, so right now, where some of these plantings are proposed is in that easement area, so there's a passage issue that the neighbor has also discussed. So we would have to redesign it to make sure that we're not blocking anybody's
Right.
right to travel and reach the beach.
What is the legal easement there? It's only a couple feet wide though, right?
Yeah, I actually have the deed language. I didn't print it out to bring it with me because I wasn't sure that we would be discussing that this evening, but I would certainly have that on a plan.
I think the site is nice and stable now.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't want to change that. Like, I wouldn't want to mess with the sprinklers. They have a well, so the water that they're putting down there, I don't think is not hurting anybody, even if it did spray on the beach or whatever.
So right now, you're asking us if you can bring this back to us for a determination.
Yeah, I just wanted to have some discussion to see if that's something you'd be willing to entertain.
Determination tonight.
No, I'm not looking for
It's just that because this was such a debated issue, I thought it was worthwhile to bring it in
Obviously.
for you.
The one thing I would like to communicate, I think, is that the vegetation along the seawall would bring the greatest benefit to the 0 to 50, and so I'd probably be adverse to changing that very much.
Okay.
Amy, what about that wetland in the front?
Yeah, I mean, to me, while both resources are important, that one
better
there, because there's no break, there's no wall there to it.
Right.
It's an isolated wetland, which is in a little bit of need of some attention. It's got a lot of invasives there, so the plan that was before us before showed some improvements to that, but that is a high wildlife value there, much higher value,
agree.
wildlife value, personally. But, I mean, both areas should be looked at, but to me, that is out of the two resource areas, that would be a one to focus on.
Right, maybe even shift some of the
Yeah,
emphasis on
we had talked a
mitigation
little bit
from the
of-
seaside to the other side.
Yeah, I know there was mixed opinions on that at
I don't agree
meetings.
with that. I think you've got a chance to vegetate some of the 0 to 50. That's a benefit.
Well, it's challenging because it's fragmented because of the seawall and the coastal bank, and there's no connectivity there, so it doesn't really provide a lot of wildlife habitat value. And as a buffer filter strip, in order to be really effective as a filter strip, it would have to be significantly wider and it would have to be contiguous. So one of
Yeah,
the things that we
yeah.
have is fragmented areas of. And one of the things that we're looking at right now is just these little fragmented pockets that don't necessarily provide anything in the way of wildlife habitat value. They're not large enough to do that, and they don't provide any value as far as slowing water down, which is one of the main values of vegetating a buffer strip.
How come they wouldn't provide any value for slowing water down?
Well, because there's very little variation in height here. So we would have an opportunity, basically what you're looking at is vertical structure. So you're looking at a canopy layer, an understory layer, and a ground cover layer that all play a role in slowing that water down. And then you're also looking, as well as above ground, you're looking at root depth. So the roots are actually what filters water.
That wall is actually a little bit above the grade too, so no water's gonna.
Right.
Well, the groundwater, I mean, you've got sand just below either side of the seawall.
Yeah.
So there's a connection there.
Yeah.
And so I disagree with your point. I think that little bit of habitat would provide value for both wildlife and for protecting flows through the groundwater to Pleasant Bay.
So, I mean, certainly when we can discuss that, and maybe if we meet out in the field, we can look at what, the effectiveness of a small vegetated strip versus a larger vegetated strip and the different levels of effectiveness of that. So we can talk about that if we meet out in the field. I think that would be a really good opportunity to discuss that.
Yep.
But, yeah, I don't want to hold your discussion up any further. I know there's still have
I
quite a
could
few
put that
things.
together for Friday morning, potentially.
For a Friday morning?
How does next Friday, next Friday's the holiday. We have a holiday.
Okay. And then the Friday after that, we're not on Thanksgiving the Friday after that.
Not the Friday after
Oh,
that, we're
the
not.
17th, I'm actually out of town that day.
Yeah.
And then the Friday after that is
It's Thanksgiving.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I don't care, I can come in next Friday, it doesn't, if people want to go,
Does it have to be on a Friday?
well, just because Brad works from home on Fridays, so it's easier for him to come with us.
I would like to attend it, and I think,
I don't mind coming in
I'm
that
not
Friday
sure,
for an hour, I
how do
don't care.
people feel like having a plan before we go out?
Well, that's what the intent would be, is to
Yeah,
have
I'd
a
have to
concept plan.
whip up a concept plan pretty quickly in the next week. But I think we could do something conceptual. It would not be as, as organized as the plan we
Yeah,
presented,
no.
but yeah.
I can come in, or you guys can, even need me necessarily. I mean, I can come in if you guys want to meet next Friday, that's fine.
I definitely think removing herbicides and pesticides would be an enormous win on that site,
Yep.
on both sides of it.
I'd be surprised it's not there already.
So we'll
It might not.
check that.
I will check on that and I'll email you. It,
It's not.
I could have missed it, you know?
So what time generally works for a meeting?
Well, hold on. When are you asking for?
It would
Next
be
Friday?
November 10th, right?
It's technically a town hall holiday, but.
I think I'd like to see something in writing first. I would like to see something in writing presented to the commission, and then we'll respond to that.
Oh, you don't want to meet on the site with the plan?
I
It wouldn't be a hearing or anything, it's just discussion.
I think I'd like to see a written plan.
Okay.
Okay, so we would submit with a formal request to amend, or would you like to just open it up as another discussion item?
Let's not do the amendment yet.
Okay.
Okay. So we would continue to, what would be your next?
Our next meeting's the 15th, if you want to talk, have more discussion then,
I'm going to be, that week between the 15th and the 19th, I'm
that's fine.
out of town, so I'd have
Would
to
be
continue
December.
it. All right, can I just grab my calendar?
Yeah,
somewhere?
that's
All
fine.
right, thank you.
I think it's December 6th is our meeting after that. We have a 3-week.
D-Day.
First Wednesday of December.
The first Wednesday of December?
Is our
December
would
6th? Yep,
yeah.
perfect. Okay, great. So
So
we'll.
put you back on for discussion
thank
December
you.
6th.
All right, thank you for your time. I really appreciate the amount of time you took tonight.
Thank you.
All right.
Next, continuation of discussion for 49 Lovers Lane, Brad?
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good, good.
Good to see you. Amy, can you remind us what the options are before us?
Sure. So this is Mr. and Mrs. Gaudenzi of
Hi.
49 Lovers Lane. They came to you at the last meeting, it came to our attention that split rail fence had been constructed partially within the 0 to 50-foot buffer to
Right.
the wetland, some of it, and the other part in the 50 to 100. So we were discussing what to do essentially with the sections of split rail in the 0 to 50 in particular. The stuff in the 50 to 100, that right up against the road, I would have approved that administratively. But in the 0 to 50, no new structures, including fencing. So the options there, you have to look at it. In terms of what I would say, to me, if this came before you, would this have been approved as a variance in the 0 to 50? Yes, it is right up next to the road. And there are others in the area that have been there for a while longer, potentially before our regulation came into play in the early 2000s. But, they would like to keep their fence. Is it something that you would entertain with, and now that everyone's been to the site?
You've all been there?
Everyone's been by. Would it be something that you would entertain as an application that came in front of you? No, they haven't submitted yet. Everyone wanted to see it. So would it be something that you would entertain an application for, or not?
Yeah, can I just say something?
Absolutely, I just wanted to
No,
preface
no,
it.
that's good, that's good. There was no intent here to put a fence up and break rules, okay? What happened was, let me give you a little history. About 5 or 6 years ago, we put an addition on our house at 49 Lovers Lane, okay? And one of the things we did is we put a front porch on the house. So it was about halfway through the project when my contractor came to me and said, Dennis, I got a call from the building department. And they says, you may need a variance for the porch because it was within a certain limit of the wetlands. Okay, so I told him, I says, all right, let's do what we gotta do. So we went ahead, drew up some plans, came before you, and the variance was approved like in 2 days. Okay, so we went ahead and did it. Now, let's fast forward. I wanna build a fence, okay? So, like Amy points out, there are fences in the area, the same problem. And so what I did was, I called the building department. And I went through the whole thing with them. It's like 6 holes in the ground, 12, 15 inches deep, split rail in nature. And I asked them, I says, do I need some kind of permit, you know, or do I gotta do something? And so they had me they had me on the phone for about a minute. They got back on and they asked me one question about the height. And I told it was between 36 and 42 inches. And they says, no, there's no issue, okay? So I go ahead and I build a fence, all right? And then I get the letter through the mail saying, you broke a rule. So that's where we are right now.
Let's go down the line and see if we have any comments. Any comments, Rob?
Who did you speak with at the building department?
I don't even remember. It was like 8, 9 months ago.
Is there any,
I don't know. I mean, like I said, when you call the building department and you ask to put up a fence, their only regulation, they don't, as long as your fence is under 6 feet high and it's
It's
on
6
your
feet?
property, if it's under that, then they don't, they're not gonna, if you say, can I build a fence, and they're gonna ask you those questions about height. They're not gonna ask necessarily questions about conservation. I mean, if you knew you lived near wetlands, anything within 100 feet of wetland needs a
Well,
conservation
what tricked me was
permit.
that the first time,
Right.
we got the call from the building department.
Right.
That we had to go through conservation, so I.
Yeah, and I
did
don't
the same
have
thing.
that permit in front, but we are working, we have what we call community development now, and we're working on everybody being cross-trained in upstairs to be able to answer these questions. So if somebody says, well, can I build a fence? You're not just asking the question of how high it is, you're gonna say, well, where is it located? Show, you know, things like that. But that didn't, most towns that doesn't exist at all, actually, but we're starting to do that.
Yeah, well, I know when I was on the phone, when I did talk
Yeah.
to the individual,
Yeah.
I did tell them the address. It was
Yeah,
49
right,
Lotus Lane.
Right, so, I mean, definitely appreciate that you called to ask.
Yeah.
So that's not the, we're,
I mean, that's where we are right now.
Any comments, Ernie?
Remind me again, the purpose of the fence?
Excuse me?
The purpose of the fence?
It was predominantly, it was decorative. It's not meant to be like a privacy fence or,
No, I
you know,
understand that.
keeping people or animals out of the property and stuff
We
like
have
that.
made exceptions, I assume, or we could make exceptions for situations where it serves a purpose other than being just aesthetic.
Yeah, I
So,
understand.
for example, if you need to, if it helps you identify the entrance to your driveway in the dead of night or something like that, then perhaps that would be grounds for it. So you need to.
Well, we did put reflectors up on both sides.
Good.
I have no other questions. Back to you.
because of where it's located, it's a beautiful fence. You did a
Oh,
great
you
job.
saw it? Okay.
Did a great job with it.
I don't do that kind of stuff. I just read some books.
My thought was, if the commission's normal take is no, how would the commission feel if the fence was reconstructed a bit, where it was a fence that did not go into the ground, it sat on the ground, similar to, like, not exactly, but like with a sawhorse style, where, I'm gonna draw this because I can't get the words out. You know, some kind of the fence, and then some kind of something on the bottom where it didn't go into the ground, where it just,
something more temporary.
something more temporary. Right. Thank you, Amy.
Well, I'm thinking of just a practical solution to this, and it has to be done procedurally correct, which I think is some type of after-the-fact filing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't, that would mean taking up what's already there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I have to take the whole thing apart to do that.
it's a tough one. I think at that location, there probably isn't any impact to specific resources that we're trying to protect in the adjacent resource area.
What if there was mitigation?
That's where I'm going. My feeling is that there probably should be an after-the-fact filing, and then I think I'd rather see some type of mitigation than have him tear up what he's done, because
Disturb it.
it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
It's not, it's really not hurting anything, but I just don't wanna set, you don't wanna set any type of precedent for
Right.
No,
construction.
Look, I'm
So-
not, I don't want to set precedent either,
Right.
but I think in this situation, there's a little bit of an extenuating
Well-
circumstance because I did try and follow the rules.
So I think what Brad's saying here is, typically, we would maybe consider letting the fence stay
Yeah,
if there was mitigation in the form of planting in another we could walk the site in another location on the property within the 100-foot buffer zone.
sure. What do you want to plant?
Well, I'd have to come out.
All right.
I know I like
But
red
I'm
cedar,
just-
but I don't, whatever grows, you know,
Not in that location, I don't think.
shady.
I think it's too shady.
It's pretty shady.
Yeah,
But, yeah, I mean, if you're amenable to having me out and
but I
discussing some
do
mitigation.
want to hear from the other commissioners and just
Yeah, I
kind of come back to,
apologize.
because this isn't, it's unusual in that we're not really allowing these structures, and I can see where you are, because you would not interpret that location
Right.
to be
All right.
that type of a resource area.
Mhm.
But, your thoughts?
My thoughts is it's a little discouraging, the discussion we just had previous to this was on changing something that we took a long time deciding. This is now basically an after-the-fact construction, and we have spent a lot of time over the past couple of years dealing with these kinds of problems, and that's a little discouraging to me.
There's a lot.
On the other hand, as you said, I don't think it's necessary to take the fence up, and if some sort of a token mitigation
It-
could be.
It feels like we're being constantly peppered by this
It's-
issue, not
We
your
are
actions,
spending
but,
a
but
lot of
just
time.
0
Got
to
2
50
more today.
structures. Yeah, it just, there's a lot of,
Coming to you next time.
there's a
Very
lot of pushing the
discouraging.
envelope in the
There's
0
a
to
lot.
50. And I would
Yeah.
like to find a way to reduce that or send a message that it's really not something this commission favors.
No, and I think you're kind of caught.
Excuse me?
I think you're sort of caught, whereas you said you did
Yeah,
try to.
like I said, I mean, we're in the middle here. We
Yeah.
get the letter through the mail, I'm saying, what the heck did we do wrong?
That's my thought. It's discouraging.
Stan, you're new to this process, but.
Yeah, I know, but no, and I'm kind of caught in between too also, because I've seen it, it looks beautiful.
Thanks.
Because of my background that I came from was always following the rules and not making exceptions. Because as you say, once you start making exceptions,
Mhm.
then it opens up a lot of problems with others. So that's kind of I'm torn also, but
Right.
if
We can always vote on an application. I mean, it would be an after-the-fact RDA, I think.
We would do an RDA. I'd come out to the site and meet with you and discuss an area to do some planting as mitigation to offset the new structure.
And
But, yeah, and I could help you with the application.
Turkeys can still walk through.
Yeah, it's different than a stockade too,
Yeah.
you know?
oh, no, yeah, it's
It's,
beautiful.
so it's,
I wasn't gonna put anything up like that.
I
so
think
if
it's
that's,
reasonable, but the ruling would be based on the RDA, and people could change their minds, so I think it's just fair to say that I think we favor a decent solution here.
yeah, I'm happy to come out and meet with you, and it sounds like, I mean, they're instructing you to apply. It sounds like, which is what we would have required anyways, so, I think you'll get a fair shake,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
okay?
Thanks.
So call me or email me in the morning, and we
Okay.
can we can go forward, okay?
Sure,
Thank you.
that's good.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Watkins. 593/597 Depot Street. Thank you so much for waiting, we're sorry.
Oh, no, no worries.
I'm sorry, you okay?
Guys just stepping all over me.
Would you like me to introduce
Yes,
it, or
please.
would you like to?
I think you should.
Okay, so this is Mr. Watkins and
Thank you.
Gail. Mr. Watkins came to the Conservation Department and wanted to thank you very much, put a driveway into a property in the back. So this is on Depot Street in West Harwich, north of where Main Street comes in. And you can see this private way is on paper, but it's not really in actuality there. It's Willard Watkins Way. So he came in and wanted to put a driveway, a portion of the driveway within the buffer zone here. And unbeknownst to me, I mean, it had gone through planning board and showed this, but when we discussed it at my window out there, you know, I said, are any trees coming down? He said, we could meander it through the trees essentially. And when I went out to the site, it was more of a cleared swath. It is definitely less than the 12 feet that I had mentioned. It is pervious, but a few trees did come down. So this would have been, when you go out to the site and look at it, it's this portion here that's in the 50 to 100. It probably would have been an RDA, honestly. And that is my, and so a fine was issued, a stop work and a fine was issued, that he paid his fine today. It was a $300 fine. And my recommendation to you, it's fairly benign, but it really should have came in front of the commission as a request for determination of applicability, which is our middle filing for work in the 50 to 100. And my recommendation to the board is that you have him file that proper paperwork for the driveway.
Any comments from the commission?
Or if you're, I mean, if you're comfortable with it as an AR, that's fine too. I think it's a little above an AR because it's a new access. And I'm sorry, feel free and,
Is there any piece of this that is in the 0 to 50?
no,
Okay, so it's just that connects in two places to the 50 to 100.
yeah, and it's actually, yes, right, correct. Sorry, go ahead.
When, when we built the house down back, my aunt, who passed away a couple of years ago at 106, had this house here.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that shows on the
Right.
plan. And just for convenience, I guess, I'd never wanted the
Right.
road there, never wanted that. And especially, I knew that one day I was gonna have this property, and I knew nobody else would want it either. But it was always a matter of money to do that road. It turns out that it is pretty expensive to
It is.
put a road in. Probably a lot more now than it was then, too, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the private way, I have the old plan, was approved.
Right,
And so I
by
kept saying-
planning board, yeah.
I kept saying, yeah, I'm gonna do it, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, and it never was financially feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so, since it was approved, as far as I was concerned, I don't know, I just had the plan, I said to approve, I just went down to the DPU and said, I want a berm put in. And he said, no problem, we'll come right over and do it. I said, oh, great. I went home, and I get a phone call. Oh, this is a private way, we can't do that. I said, what do you mean, private way? We can't put it in a private way. I said, well, it's all approved. And they said, no, you gotta go down and do whatever you know. I mean, I am ignorant of all of this. I'm not into
It's okay.
construction or any of this. And so I came down and I had been planning this. I used to walk up through it. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of property.
It is.
Where does the road go to?
Pardon me?
Where does the road go to?
Our house.
Oh, it's the house is
There's
in
a
back.
house
house is
back,
way,
way back
way-
there, yeah.
It's from the old existing driveway, which is going away. It's 640 feet to my front door. And I haven't taken any trees down that didn't try to take my house down.
Yeah.
Because we
No, I
have
went back
pine
there. It's
trees
pretty,
go down.
pretty private.
Yeah, it's very private. We love it that way.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I still wasn't gonna move this road until, it's an FHA loan. I have this house under agreement.
Right.
And they said, no, we don't want that driveway there, gotta move it. I said, really? I gotta move it? I said, okay, at your expense. And then the bank's lawyer came in and said, no, you're gonna pay for it all. This wasn't a good thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I thought when you sold the house, you were supposed to get money. I mean, it's costing me a fortune.
Yeah.
Up to about $30,000.
Oh, boy.
All right, do we have any further questions?
I think it would just been something, had we known that trees were gonna really come out when
Well,
you
I
came, right?
didn't want to take the tree.
I know. They
But
d-
see, the problem was with those trees, we'd either had to go down towards the wetland, which would have gone
Yeah,
onto the
right.
hill,
Right.
which that wouldn't have been good.
No, it wouldn't have been good either.
And, or we had to go up,
Yeah,
and that would have gone onto their land.
yeah.
I-
You can
and the bank-
always, I'm easily reachable. If there's ever any issues there where you can't comply with the condition that I set forth on, we're very easy to work with, so.
And I know that,
Yeah.
because I came here 15 years ago when I did the house, and
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
simple.
So it's
And-
not, this is
and-
not a big deal.
And the
but-
point was that I told my excavator,
Yeah.
and my wife says, don't throw him under the bus.
No, I know him.
I said,
So Amy,
He should have called me too.
I just,
Yes.
are you recommending?
I'm recommending an RDA.
After the fact RDA?
Yeah, not double the fee or anything, but I think for the putting in of a new road essentially, in the 50 to 100 partially, I think it would have been an RDA. It seems very approvable. It's just not something that should have been administratively. If no trees were coming down, that'd be different. But
I think either way, it probably should have been an RDA, just the fact that it wasn't a
yeah,
road.
What's an RDA?
it's our middle filing.
Determination.
It's it's called a request for determination of applicability, RDA for short. It's our middle filing. It's above, the step above what you had originally requested of me, but it's a step below most of what you've seen here tonight. So it's a few pages. You already have the plan, so that's good. It is a hearing, but it seems like this is a very approvable thing under an RDA.
do you remember when, well, of course you remember when you came over.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we only took a tree out, and
And you told me
now I
3.
can't, huh? I said 3.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was anything in 100 feet
Yeah,
we could take
right.
down. If you see this, where the wetland is down with, just
Yeah.
below where the
Right.
2 roads meet?
Yep.
I said, we took that oak tree,
Yeah.
there wasn't an oak tree, it was a dying
Mm.
choke cherry tree is what it was.
Yeah.
And it was in that over
Yeah.
100 feet.
Okay.
And the other one of the pines, one of them was smack
Yeah.
in the middle of the road.
Right.
But the other pine was up at the other end, up here, and I
Yeah.
can't swear to it,
It's
but
okay.
I think it was maybe even half the tree
Yeah.
was 100 feet.
I mean, it was just cleared out,
RDA.
so this is,
Let's get it done.
this isn't gonna be
Yeah.
a big hassle. I'm more than happy to meet with you too and do the paper, help you with the
It's a
paperwork.
fairly simple application.
If you want, when you're leaving here today,
That's
it's
good
right out in the
agreement here.
wall, I can hand it to you, or
Perfect.
Patty can hand it to you, okay?
Okay.
You can give it a first stab, and then, contact me, we can help you out.
Now, and how long would that take?
Once you get it to us, we'll hear it within 21 days.
Because we have a closing, and we've just already extended it again, and the closing is due on the 23rd of November.
We don't have another meeting before then.
We don't have one. So
Well,
we're gonna
that
have to get in,
means-
we're
that
gonna have to.
We have the 15th,
we're
but if
gonna
we
lose
can't
that
get it
house. We're
on,
gonna lose the buyers. We're gonna lose them.
Yeah, the loan comes up,
Yep, we're gonna lose them.
what it could
it's an
make-
FHA loan, and
Yeah.
they're gonna reconsider.
I'm sorry, but this was
Nope,
done
that's
in
okay.
violation.
That's okay, it's not your
Nothing we
fault.
can do about it.
You know, there's nothing we can do, but we will get the application. We'll
Yeah,
let
I
you
mean,
know.
it seems like
Done.
this appeals like it's a very approvable thing.
But we don't need the road.
Yeah, but we have the road, so I mean, let's not get crazy about this, okay?
Well, we're gonna lose the house, and I saw,
Well, there's nothing
So
we can
you
do.
can't use
I
the
mean-
existing, the driveway that already
They don't,
cuts.
the
No.
owners,
back.
the buyers do not want to, they
No.
want that driveway done.
But the
because
other
it's on their
driveway is-
property.
it's the bank doesn't want it.
Understood,
And
but
the
the other
driveway is
driveway is already in place, right?
Pardon me?
Yes,
The
it
new
is.
driveway is in
Yes.
place, so if you discontinue use of that previous driveway, they would still have an issue?
No,
From
they-
all intents and purposes, this is probably gonna be approved.
If we don't close,
Right.
By the 23rd, we've lost these people.
if the
I
the
don't know
bank
if
is
we're,
gonna,
I don't know if this is inhibiting your closing. That's what I'm going.
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
understand what is,
if
what
we
is,
don't close by the 23rd,
and what is it that's the closing is contingent on?
well, we moved it from the 2nd. It was
I
supposed to-
understand, but I
It was
understand,
supposed to be tomorrow, and they moved it to the 20th.
what are they looking for from us?
They're just, all they're saying is they're gonna re-evaluate the interest on the wall, or
But I don't understand what they're looking for
It's
from the
stopping, for
Conservation
some
Commission.
reason, it's stopping, it will stop them because
they want the closing.
there's something about an FHA loan, the federal, and they have like, all these clauses
So
in
their
there.
term is gonna expire.
regulations.
And if the term
The term
expires, they're gonna
expires.
get
That's
But I-
right.
an increased
But I
rate.
don't understand
Right,
what's
And-
conditional on our
Why it's
decision.
not approved.
because of the property line and the deed and everything, and where the line is. That's not on our property. It's not on our
Right.
property.
They
This
want the
driveway,
off the other person's
they want it
property.
off,
The other driveway's already
They
in.
want it off your
They're not using the
yes,
old driveway
exactly.
anyhow.
They want it off theirs,
Technically,
so that
it's
when they
not-
get that
they don't
title
have
and
an
everything,
approval
everything's
technically
clean.
right now for that
And
driveway.
we're gonna put loam
That's why.
over that
Yep.
old driveway and seed it,
I understand.
Yeah, so,
and I was gonna
The
put
old
some.
driveway is on the other
on their
house's
property,
property.
yes, yes.
It's actually on my property. I mean, it's on my property. I mean, I own it, but I don't need to own
With the
it.
transfer of properties.
To
it would
sell
not
it.
be
It's okay.
They
Pardon?
want all
With the
their-
transfer of properties, part of it.
If they want to talk to me, they can too, if they're,
It's the feds, it's the FHA, DA.
she's gonna
loans.
get you, she's gonna get you the
Access to the
application. We'll
house
get
is
you
on
going
the
as soon as we can.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's,
Is it possible to get them on for the 15th?
No. The legal ad was already closed, we had to send it out. Can't,
It's beyond the scope of an RDA.
I'm sorry.
No, that's,
yeah.
It's definitely beyond the scope of an RDA
The administrative review.
Over an AR, yeah.
or an AR.
Tell you the truth, we wanted to sell my house in the back.
Yeah.
Buy that house and just move in.
All right, it looks worse than it is. It's really only about 3 pages.
Okay,
Give it a stab and give me a
Alright.
call if you have the questions, okay?
okay.
Do we want to give them back their plot plans, because they'll need it
Do you
for
want,
their
yeah, do you want to save
I-
these?
We can leave
Because
it.
you can resubmit them with your
you can-
No,
application.
you can
Okay,
give
so
it
we'll
back to us.
resubmit
Copies, so
We have
Yeah.
to
probably
resubmit
want
the
them back.
application, so let's
Yeah.
take it back.
Don't pay for the extra copies.
Pardon me?
That way you don't have to pay for extra
Give them
copies.
back to us.
You can take those.
Thank you so much for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming in.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just take these.
Do you want your pictures too?
Well,
Sure, because we will have to submit the pictures again, too.
It's helpful.
I already gave it back.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And Jeff will start this, and then you can give Amy a call while I'm at work.
I'm here.
If you need Amy, you can give her a call. We'll start this paper.
Yeah, some of the things you may not know.
Yes. Don't be depressed.
Oh, I have
Don't
one.
be depressed. We'll get through it.
Thank you so much.
You're not the
Have a good
first one
night.
that
Good
this has
night.
happened to.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Let's go back. Can we go back in order now, to order
Sure.
conditions? Order of conditions for Churchill first, 17 Shore.
Okay.
I thought for number 6, we had a little more detail to what the no-mo zone would be in terms of dimensions.
I don't think we did, but we can look into that if there was dimensions.
'Cause,
I think we said to allow access behind the shed,
I have to
but to
proofread so many
replant that back
documents, so I can't
corner.
just-
But if you would make a note, Patty, to check the tape
that I
from
can't
last
do it
meeting
nearly
for
as well on the
17
computer. I
Shore
have to
about
print
where
it
the
out.
mitigation
Yeah,
should
the
be.
same way.
I can change that verbiage, I mean,
It seems like you'd want some way to,
yeah.
check as to what was done. This way, it's, what does it say? It's just a no-mow zone with no dimensions.
Right,
So I think that needs a little more detail.
okay.
And, well, check the tape.
Yeah, we'll check the tape
Yucca
on that
plants.
one.
Number 9 has a typographical error. There is to be,
Oh, is to be, yeah.
I don't know if that makes any difference.
Why
Not
are we
would
asking,
be.
why are we asking them to remove the yucca plants again?
They're invasive,
Yeah, so is most of the other stuff we
I
see.
know, but it's right.
It's impossible to remove
I
them.
have a personal vendetta
I can
against
see that.
yucca.
I do too. It's impossible to
I
remove them.
hate those too.
I've never seen that
You've never been
in an order
thorned
of
by one.
conditions, though.
You
I
ever
think
lived
it's
to
a little
receive the
overreaching,
thorns of a
I hate
yucca?
to
They're probably
say.
gonna remove them anyway, because that whole site's gonna be altered, but,
I mean,
Possibly,
this came
but
up last meeting,
But-
wasn't it? This.
yeah, so you
okay,
can
so
abstain.
I'll abstain.
I mean, like,
You can still sign, though, we need a signature. But-
Okay.
aside from your personal vendetta, my preference would be to take that out, but,
Well, those
Put it
were
up
the
to
only
everybody else.
invasives within the work limit.
I guess the encouraged is the thing that,
We can
are we-
remove number 7.
Well, no, if we can tell them to do it,
what are you looking at?
it probably should be a directive or not.
Oh,
All right,
you
so
know.
just remove yucca plants from property.
Yeah.
Okay,
That'll make you happy, right?
I'm fine with that.
Remove invasive yucca plants.
for signs of the
The
property.
invasive yuccas. Okay,
Any more comments on the order of conditions for 17 Shore Drive?
I'm sorry.
Any more comments on the order of conditions for 17 Shore Drive?
No.
All those in favor of approving?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. None opposed? Any abstentions?
2
So
abstentions.
2 abstentions, 3 approvals.
We do need 4 signatures. A signature does not necessarily mean, it just makes it a legal document, so either Carolyn or Stan. It doesn't matter. Who motioned?
Oh, I think we went right to a vote. Let
I
me-
know.
Let me back up on
Let's
this.
back up.
I-
getting
I
late.
move- I move that we approve
Brad?
the order of conditions for 17 Churchill, Shore Drive.
Second.
Second, all those in
Okay.
favor, say aye. Aye. 3 ayes,
To abstain.
2
2
abstentions.
abstentions.
Okay.
302.
Feels late, but it really isn't.
Hey, on
It's getting
George
there.
Drive, didn't we also, I didn't.
It's late.
I'm sorry. Didn't we also condition having dry wells? Oh, it is, it's there. Got it.
Put it
Okay,
in there?
thank you.
44 Smith Street, they submitted a plan showing the reduction of the lawn. FYI. .900 square feet of lawn to be removed on the eastern corner, they submitted, for Smith Street,
Number
for the
6
metal
says-
building.
Number 6 says 800.
Oh, this is your
Say 800?
master
Number
chief.
6.
No,
It should be
Sorry.
900. Maybe she gave us a little extra, huh?
800.
I like them.
Should be 900, I can fix that.
Nice people.
I think I would have voted for them putting a gas station in the middle of the wetland. Brad wouldn't have though. I would have got shot down.
And they agreed to the no irrigation, no fertilization, so
Yeah.
keep that in there.
Don't we usually add in perpetuity?
Yes. In perpetuity, not to be released by a certificate of compliance. Yeah, I'm slouched. All right.
further comments on 44 Smith Street, water conditions? I move we approve them.
These first thing in the morning, so you
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions, or,
Abstain.
so 2 abstentions and 3 approvals.
302.
Let's keep it fair.
I'll fix those conditions first thing in the morning, so we can get them out. Do that first thing. Next, you have minutes. Does anybody not have a copy? They're
I
off
didn't-
the press.
I didn't get a copy.
There you go. I thought did I put one on in front of you, Brad? No? Oh, here's an extra. Where's the original? Do you have the original? The not crimped one. No, I wanted a not crimped one, but that's fine, it doesn't matter. No worries. You can sign one of these, doesn't matter, we can still copy it. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, there we go. Thank you. I like your initials. While you're reading those, I will be right back, okay?
What do you put on there?
Minutes? I think we've done that we approved.
The Zaret project on 11 Harbor Way is missing the comments on asking for mitigation to include, I think, 2 or 3 oyster reefs. That needs to be added.
In the Herring River?
Yeah.
The old fish
I
shack.
thought we reviewed these already, because we're asking for that comment.
You're famous.
Those guys.
2 or 3 oyster reefs
Is that a misquote?
Yeah,
Talking about the Cape Cod Times.
right. The shellfish mitigation would include the installation of, I think, 2 to 3 oyster, I forget if it was 2 or 3. And they would be cited with assistance from the Natural Resources Department and Conservation. I think that's the biggest fine we've issued in a long time. If,
Oh, I oppose that. Yeah, the human salmon. Always coming upstream.
So 2 to 3 oyster reefs in the Herring River.
with the siting to be determined through coordination with the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation Commission.
How we doing, Stan?
Fine.
First good meeting?
Oh, yeah.
This is where I wish I don't get up at 4:30.
This isn't bad. This one here ended at 10.
I had a truck full of sod show up at 6:45. We got Ray's place done today, though.
Patty, on page 3, too, at the top of the page is the first full bullet, where Mr. Zaretti states, yes, you got a T there. And then, under the audience comments, you've got a statement from me, states the fines commission will be less than the abutters had in mind. I'd
Like to get
take
rid of
that
that.
out,
Sure,
yeah,
no
take that out completely.
You want that?
No.
I thought it was great. I was gonna get that tattoo. That was such a good quote. Got a little extra space over here. I thought it looked great.
Anything we've.
What do they want, 350,000
Leave it here
in
and we'll
fines?
shred it.
Yes.
It was a pretty steep
Yeah,
number.
but that wouldn't set a precedent.
No.
Right.
You can keep whatever you like.
Yeah, that was a tough discussion. This doesn't really reflect that.
That's probably good.
Yeah.
From past history here.
Yeah,
Someone voted against it, though.
Yeah, well, that's right.
we keep everything.
We still on right now?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I just wanted to add,
I was gonna carry on that a little bit, but maybe better
Natural resources.
to show restraint.
Yeah, yep,
Just to add that comment on the oyster reef.
sure.
Yep.
Okay,
Need to approve those?
I think we do.
with that change,
I'm gonna have to just get rid of that T.
yeah, it's fine. I'll have them sign the
Okay.
top copy.
Okay.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of August 16th.
Move we approve the minutes of August 16th with changes.
Second.
We have a seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain,
One abstention.
Will you sign the top copy of this one, please?
Yep.
since I wasn't here.
Oh boy, oh boy. Almost, we got a couple left to do. The golf course.
Oh,
Not as bad as originally thought. So the golf course, this is as hot off the presses today. The golf course we approved for a very large cart barn, only a very small section of which was gonna be within our jurisdiction. So, when you go down there, see this is our jurisdiction right here. None of this is. They have to go to planning board, it's all cleared already, should not have been, but that's besides, they didn't notify us to start work, I didn't know this was happening. But all of this from here over got cleared. This may not have, should have been, outside of our purview, but it looks like a lot has been done here. When in reality, so our limit of work silt fence should have been here. They only put one here to begin with. So when I went down there and I saw all this being cleared, thought that a lot more had been done outside of what should have been the limit of work than what actually was done. So with it, outside of what the limit of work should have been, was an additional, they cleared an additional, these two areas here, a little bit in the 50, and in the 50 to 100. The town surveyor did that today. So an additional 238 square feet of clearing was done that should not have been done. So,
Who was the contractor for this? Just out of curiosity.
it was partially done in-house and partially not done in-house. But that's not really where the issue lied.
I'm just curious who the violators are, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, it's a town problem.
was it DPW or the golf course?
Who did the work?
Yeah.
It was a mix of the public works and the golf course.
Okay.
However, the permit may not have gotten, with all the conditions, may not have gotten, not through us, we sent the permit out to who it should have gone to, but the permit didn't make its way down the line, put it that way. I don't wanna throw anybody under the bus, it's a town error. And I think we should treat it as how we would treat anybody else who had, it's not a substantial violation, but it is a little violation. At least be made to do some replanting. Fines are not off the table either, minimal, I would say, for something like this, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. I mean, we didn't have the start work meeting, they didn't have their sign up, they didn't have copies of the permits on site, and they went a little bit above and beyond, so. They're on board now. I've met with the golf department, I've met with administration, with engineering, with DPW. Everyone is on board and knows what needs to happen now. But it's up to you about how, I mean, it is a minor violation, and as a town, I think we should be held to the same or higher standard than everybody else, so.
The fine is kind of like charging my left hand and
Right.
paying my right hand.
Understood.
But I definitely see the value of mitigation plantings. Let's restore what was damaged, get back to as square one as we possibly can, and educate all those parties involved. I think
possible
educational
because-
piece here is important, so it doesn't happen, because there's a lot of
Right.
different
They're not
entities
gonna
involved
need
here.
all that area within the limit of work, that's just work area. So I would recommend double the amount of planting, not only replanting what was disturbed, but along that edge, just outside the 50, doing a native buffer strip along the dirt roads there.
Sounds good.
So double the amount of square footage for planting than what was disturbed.
Are they gonna continue to use that dirt road?
They're going to, yes. It is actively used now, they will continue to use it.
I just see the traffic on that road quadrupling, because now they will have a facility over there that,
We could potentially talk too about permanently trying to create more of a buffer between the road and where that wetland is at its closest point.
I mean, is this a time, because of the infractions, that we could ban the use of that road within the 50?
I don't think we can. Because infractions, I mean, they're not major.
It was
And-
pre-existing, right?
It's been pre-existing for a very long time with that golf course, so.
Types of plants were taken down?
A mix, the whole, I mean, it was all, it was
A
pitch
salad.
pine, oak, woodland with a decent understory of clethra and sheep laurel and,
What dimension of a buffer strip could you fit in there? That sounds like a nice plan to put in a decent buffer strip.
well, that's why, so in addition to replanting that area that they disturbed, I would do a few rows of shrub plantings along the road where there currently is none. I don't have dimensions exactly. I mean, if we were to double the amount, they're willing to do the planting.
I'm wondering if a 10-foot strip would have more value than just 2 rows? Is there room for that?
10 foot wide,
Yeah. Between
this is
the,
a 1 is 30, yeah.
between the wetlands and the road?
Because so the wetlands on the other side of the road from where the disturbance was.
Okay.
This is all naturally vegetated here. I wouldn't even bother, I wouldn't touch it. What I'm talking about revegetating is here
Where
and
they've
then
clear cut
here
everything.
Okay,
and here. Because that'll also help because the grades go down here.
right.
So if we, not just with grass, but if they revegetate along this part of the road, before it even gets to the road and across the wetland, it'll be infiltrated.
Right.
That'll look nice, too.
I'm even wondering, like, where they've all cleared everything up there, what's even gonna be there? You know, all the way up to the parking lot.
Well, so they have to go to planning board for site plan review or waiver, whichever what planning board decides. Vegetation is gonna come into play on the rest of the site, in this area outside of our jurisdiction. So that'll be determined there, cause there will definitely, and they've said they wanna do some screening, so. And with vegetation on the rest of the area, so. All right?
So how will this take form?
Can you make a motion to support at least a 2-to-1 replanting of disturbed area?
So you're gonna have to do like an after-the-fact RDA?
Just
I
gonna
don't, no, this can be
do we
done,
have an after-the-fact administrative review?
I can do it after the fact administrative, or, I mean, this is an open filing. If you, I'm gonna be the one doing the plan. most likely, the planting plan for it. So I can show you the planting plan, but this is just how we're gonna deal with it. I don't think, it wouldn't be an after-the-fact filing, because we're not gonna approve what they did. This is just to fix.
It's an enforcement order,
It's an enforcement order, yeah.
so it really should be a
Approve the
requirement.
enforcement order to do at least a 2-to-1 mitigation for disturbed area in the buffer zone with native plantings.
And how much, I know you said this already, but how much disturbance is in the 50 to 100?
The total disturbance, there's 67 square feet within the 50. And the cumulative, so it's 238 minus 67 in the 50 to 100, so the total number in the buffer, the whole buffer is 238. So it'd be,
171.
yeah. It would be 476. So 500 square feet. 500 square feet.
Yep.
Minimum.
I
Replanting.
was gonna say, was that gonna give, what Brad was saying, like
Maybe
a
they're-
buffer along the road, is that?
Yeah, we
The
could, we'll
penalty
say,
could be they have to sit through a couple of our meetings. And if they yawn, they have to come back.
Yeah, how annoying it is.
I never noticed
I don't think it'll
anybody
be a
using
10
that
foot.
road. I didn't know.
I'm serving, look, I'm serving a penalty.
It's just a service road for the,
Service road for the
All right, I'd rather
Yeah.
pay.
I kind of would like a motion. to that effect.
Move we approve an after-the-fact administrative review,
I would just
No.
do it as an enforcement order
an enforcement order.
to replant at minimum 500 square feet of native plantings, under
So,
my
Move we
direction.
approve an enforcement order against the Cranberry Valley Golf Course at 183 Oak Street to do mitigation planning of no less than 500 square feet
under her direct.
under the
I'll show you
oversight
the plan.
of the Conservation Administrator.
Okay.
Second.
I wanted to second that.
Oh, go ahead, I'll withdraw my second.
for the record, we have a
Right.
second.
Oh my gosh,
All those in
there's
favor?
infighting already.
Any opposed? None.
Dan's tough. He's
Motion
tough.
carries.
You know, these
Well,
accountants, you know,
All right,
this way I can give him a hard time at the
get a
golf
number
course.
crunch right
Cora
before.
Lane, update on Cora Lane. I talked to the owners, Lou and Lori Sergano, about the removal of the existing lawn and the installation of the loam that some of us saw at the property last time. I do remember there being an existing irrigation system in there when I visited the site before. Said they're just replacing it and just redoing the lawn. I do think they're expanding the lawn area a little bit from what I've seen there in the past. Like I said, what I did see, it looks like some expansion. It's hard to tell exactly because we don't have a plan that shows where the edge of natural vegetation was before they did the work. I instructed them, because they had the mitigation plantings already on site, that they should, this was a couple weeks ago, I said, keep going with that. We don't want those plants to die. It's getting to the end of planting season. Get those mitigation plantings in. I told them the new lawn had to be in the same footprint of the existing lawn and had to be a native grass mix, no sod or non-native grasses. I don't know how, I think there is a small expansion of lawn area, but I can't tell how much. I don't think it's substantial from what was there in the past, but I think there is some. So I don't know if we want to make them do like another row of mitigation
How do you
plantings.
approve it, Amy, if you
I
can't tell?
don't know. I can't, because we don't have an existing, we didn't have a plan before that showed existing edge of vegetation.
That's a tough one to
It is tough.
embellish, I think.
I think getting them not to, because I think they were getting ready to do a traditional turf.
Yeah, it looked like it.
Getting them to say no, that they're not going to do that was a big thing. And the mitigation planting plan that they did for the other stuff was decent, so. It's up to you how you want to proceed. If you want to see how the mitigation planting plan goes and how this seed turns out, we can do that.
And the mitigation planting plan was because of,
They cut, because not
because they
the
cleared
lawn,
that
they cut
land.
down they cleared
All
the back.
back,
Yeah, they cleared all the
yeah.
trees and underbrush and back.
Right.
And I've told them to, just a one-time natural mulch to help keep moisture in and keep them through the winter, but after that, they're not allowed to mulch back there. It's not gonna be like a manicured area. So, they've been okay with that. Are you guys okay with just kind of seeing how things play out there then? Okay.
I don't see we have much choice.
Yeah, I mean, I have photo documentation, but it's so hard to tell because edge of lawn also is up for interpretation because in the past, it was a previous owner, they hadn't taken care of it in a while, so there was some weeds coming up, so the edge of lawn was like up for interpretation, in that spot for a while. Okay. So I'll keep you updated on the progress there. I don't have any written, I'd hoped to have written changes to the regs. I've been looking at the land subject to coastal storm flowage regs, as well as our ratio, mitigation type ratio type things. I'll put it on next meeting as well.
You sent one document around, and
Yeah, I wanted you to look at
started
it.
to go through it, but there were no highlighted changes in there or anything. I did notice one up front early on.
Just so I sent it, yes, a lot of it's track changes. It was just so you had a working document of what we currently, what I'm currently working on, so you could be working off the same
When you
thing.
do make changes, you'd send us a red line.
Oh, of course,
right?
yeah,
Good.
yep, I haven't gotten there yet. We do need a representative from this board to the Community Preservation Committee. They're particularly active this time of year, but in general, they meet once a month or so. Maybe less actually in the summer months or spring months, but so Community Preservation Committee, for anybody who doesn't know, is in charge of Community Preservation Act funds. A small percentage of your taxes every year goes to this designated fund. And every year the CPC committee vets applications from various departments, conservation for land acquisition, the library for restoring the columns, for example, at the Brooks Library, recreation, things like that. So it's way more than conservation. They vet the applications. There's a pot of money. There's always less money than there are applications for the money. So they essentially vote on what's going to go to town meeting, what's going to go on the warrant for town meeting vote. They have their charge. They look at it and how their projects meet these criteria. And Walter Diggs used to be the representative here. Walter is now an alternate, but he cannot, as an alternate, he cannot be on CPC. So if anybody is interested, they're dying to have somebody. If somebody wants to try it out for a little while, that's amenable too. But they're having issues with members and stuff, memberships. So Walter really enjoyed it.
Is our rep a voting member?
Yes.
Yeah.
Our rep is a voting member. That makes a big change too.
Yeah.
There will also be, well, actually, real estate and open space, they might not need a member of you guys anymore. So may not be begging that anymore.
I would love to, but with my winter schedule, it wouldn't be fair to them, so.
Well, there's the option too, is if you had the interest in doing it for most of the year, and then when you weren't here, having somebody else, I could see if that's an option. I don't know, voting-wise, how that would go.
I prefer, it'd be nice if somebody could do it, but if we don't have, I think we do need to be represented.
It's mandatory, actually.
Right, so if nobody steps up, then maybe you and I could tune it. I'm not looking for a lot new meetings to go to, but I think it is important we have a rep, so consider it, folks, and I think it is a pretty interesting committee to be on.
Yeah, and Paula's not here either, so want to know. I know everyone's got a lot of commitments. It's hard to do more, but
My wife would kill me.
Mine would kill
I know
me.
she's watching me on TV right now. I love you.
I don't want to say this, I actually.
That's a good point, I shouldn't have said that.
Did you?
Speaking for the
Yeah.
library.
I'm dead when I go home.
columns. The last
Yeah, yeah.
meeting there was,
Yeah, Amy, is there any chance that we could all share the,
I
That's what you were
I
saying.
don't know because you're gonna be a voting member, so they do need some sort of continuity.
Yeah,
So at most, it would be, you know, somebody who could do it for a few months and then somebody else who could do it for the rest of
And
the year.
when do they meet?
And what-
I don't know exactly. We could look that up for you. Actually, I can check it right here. Hold on.
When do we meet again? Do we meet this month?
We meet on the 15th.
15th.
Okay.
Today's
We're
the
supposed to
first.
have the cranberry, the bog meeting.
Okay.
Well, it'll be in the small hearing room. I prefer it to be in here.
Right.
I don't think we're gonna get a huge crowd, but it would, I don't know if I'm gonna be ready for the 15th. I know we really tried, but
We should be ready for that cranberry one. That's gonna be a contentious one.
I'm thinking about the 6th of December instead and having it in this
Bog
room.
of
I know
Thanks.
Mark Coleman doesn't want that. He wants to just get it
Opponents.
going and he thinks that room will be sufficient, but
Yeah.
I haven't had time to put together the things I need to put together for you.
Yeah, we need to review a draft
Right.
lease. We have to come to
Yeah, and
agreement.
I think I sent the leases,
You did the old one,
the
yeah.
old lease.
But
I
we
can
got-
resend that and other examples.
I don't know.
I think we need a little more time to prepare. What's nice is there's 3 weeks in between meetings after the 15th, which is a little bit of a breather
Mhm.
on everyone's end, but on our end administratively, because as Patty knows, as soon as we get done with one meeting, we're already on the next right now.
Sounds like a party in that office.
It's a party.
A lot of paper.
I owe you a couple RDAs for that December meeting,
Yes.
so. So that'll,
Community
things in.
Preservation Committee. Full site. Desktop. It's thinking.
I think we can just, decide by the 15th. If somebody wants to step up, that'd be great, and if not, we can try to find a way to platoon it.
October 25th, what date was that? They met then.
Last week.
It was a Wednesday.
Yeah, last Wednesday.
Lately, they've been doing 1 or 2 meetings a month because it's our, warrant or application time. So it's probably opposite Wednesdays from what we meet. So at least it's the same day.
Same time?
Oh, no. I'll get back to you. I'll write it up. Yeah. Okay, so if we don't have anybody tonight, let's put it back on for discussion next meeting. It would be great to have somebody at next meeting step up.
Brad's gonna get in trouble.
Oh,
So update on the Trails Committee really quick. The selectmen have voted, and I'm kind of unbiased about it. The selectmen voted, this is not on the agenda, it was just an update, to dismantle the committee, a formal committee. Trails Committee are a group of stewards. They essentially make recommendations to the Conservation Commission. One of them, they each go to a specific parcel and make sure that parcel's looking good, clean up trash, make sure the trails look good, report any violations or vandalisms to me, so we can take care of things. But it was made a very formal group back a while ago, an actual town committee. And they were, for some reason, the membership is 9, so we've been having a hard time getting a quorum of 5 at meetings, and it came down to, is it really necessary to have a formal board who needs to post agendas, do minutes, all this other stuff, if somebody, and I've been going to their meetings since I started here, if there's that liaison connection, and maybe we can get more done without some of the bureaucracy that comes along with it. So we'll still be meeting the same time, which is usually the 3rd Thursday of the month at 3:45. I'll organize that. But essentially, there's not going to be a formalized committee anymore, which maybe will help promote more people to want to be involved. So the first thing I think we're going to do is organize a group cleanup of the Bell's Neck conservation lands, because there's a lot of little trash there, especially nips. There's a lot of things going on there. So we also want to recognize a member of the committee, Wayne, who is out there every day cleaning up, and, cleaning up.
Oh, I'm on camera.
You're on camera. He's cleaning.
Thanks, buddy.
Anyway, but that's kind of where they're at. So you'll still, it's gonna be like a friends of type thing. You're more than welcome to go to the meetings. I'm gonna hold them. And I think, there should be really no change in how you interact with them and how we interact with them. Okay?
Will the process be under your
Yeah,
supervision?
and it always has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It always has been. Nothing is gonna change for me. I still gonna go to the meetings, I'm
Right.
still gonna organize things, and facilitate, if, like, today, or my AmeriCorps member and myself, and we've been walking trails this week when we can to see where trees came down in the big windstorm. So when we find things, or when the Trails Committee finds things, they report it to me. If I can't go out and take care of it, I ask Highway or Natural Resources to go do it. It's gonna be the same thing, same kind of chain of command, if you will.
Yep.
Just without the worrying about posting agendas, and when the agenda doesn't change, because it's like update on Isabel Smith, update on Sand Pond, update on this.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll make things a little easier.
Sounds reasonable, and 9 members just seems to be too much.
They dropped it to 5 before they dismantled the board, but now it can be as many as you want. You don't have to worry about quorums
Just
now.
volunteers.
It's just volunteers. I have a volunteer opportunity for anybody who's interested next Wednesday at Thompson's Field. I'll send you an email.
Any woodwork?
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
Let me know.
Okay.
Wood. Sometimes you have to remove wood from Thompson's Field.
Recreate the field.
Right?
Yes,
Anyway.
locust.
All right, so that's all I've got for you. Unless you have something else for me. There's a Cape Coastal Conference coming up. I should say I'm not completely done. First week of December, they've sent out the save the date, but not the invite. And that is, I highly recommend it if you can go.
Is it Wednesday, Thursday?
So Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay.
I might only be able to go for one day. Patty's gonna go for one day.
It's
And
really good.
Nikki. Bernie went last year. You went.
I've been several years.
You've been. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's free. So please go. And it's got
Awesome and free, 2 things
And
that never go
food.
together.
Yeah.
And they feed you.
Yes, coffee,
With food, that's 3 things to go
Lunches.
together.
All right.
It's a good
Lots
lunch.
of
And-
Concom agents and members there, so talk.
It's good for networking, and it's good
Yeah.
to see new technologies and see how other people do things.
And did our videographer stay awake tonight?
He did.
He's there!
All
All right.
Not bad. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
So moved, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
103.
Okay, we're adjourned. I have to ask a question here now.
We